Chapter 176. Five Realms Void, Northern Region. At this moment, the pig-riding old man was looking towards the north. That was because an extremely powerful aura was already approaching. That was the aura of a soul transformation cultivator. The black-robed old man lightly patted the big white pig's neck and said softly, "Old pal, the soul transformation cultivator is here." Oomph. The white dragon shook its pig head, but it was not afraid. It was afraid of the little white pig, but it was not afraid of a soul transformation cultivator. In the void, someone was coming from the sky. The black-robed old man instantly dispersed his aura. "Fellow cultivator, please wait." The black-robed old man sat on the big white pig and said softly. However, this was enough to make the Selectin Sex patriarch appear, because the White Bones patriarch also sensed the presence of the soul transformation cultivator. The clouds parted. The Selectin Sex soul transformation patriarch appeared. White clothes, long hair. However, his face was half flesh and half skeleton. He looked extremely terrifying. If he was in the mortal world, this appearance could scare a few people to death. Deadwood immortality technique. The black-robed old man could not help but gasp when he saw the middle-aged cultivator's appearance. According to legend, the Deadwood immortality technique was a forbidden technique of the Selectin sect, because those who cultivated this technique could no longer be considered a real person. This was because cultivators would become half dead and half alive, half human and half ghost, or in other words, neither human nor ghost. That was definitely not something an ordinary cultivator could endure. Therefore, the Selectin sect sealed it and designated it as a forbidden technique. However, the cultivator who cultivated the Deadwood immortality technique would greatly increase his realm and lifespan. In terms of realm, the person who cultivated this technique would definitely reach the peak of the soul transformation realm. At the same time, the lifespan of a soul transformation cultivator was usually around 10,000 years. However, if one cultivated the Deadwood immortality technique, then the lifespan of a soul transformation cultivator would directly increase by 4 to 5 times. However, what was the point of having a lifespan if one was half human and half ghost? The black-robed old man really did not expect that there was actually someone in the Selectin sect who cultivated this kind of half-dead technique. Oh, he. Ancestor White Bones looked at the black-robed old man. He had not expected the other party to see through his cultivation technique with a single glance. At the same time, his eyes flashed with a hint of surprise. White Dragon Divine Beast. The White Dragon Divine Beast was the spiritual beast closest to the Dracophant soul, devouring beast in the Pure Land realm. There seemed to be only one in the entire Bone mainland, and it belonged to the eldest disciple of Sheng Luan. Could it be the person before me? Ancestor White Bones raised her eyebrows and said, "Sir, could it be that you're the first disciple of Saint Wheel, crippled Longzi?" A broken dragon was not a dragon. This was the reason why Sheng Luan gave the black-robed old man a Taoist name. In the eyes of the Holy Wheel Master, the 5 disciples of the Holy Wheel couldn't completely inherit his mantle. Crippled Longzi. The black-robed old man hadn't heard anyone mention this Taoist name in 10,000 years. "That's me." The black-clothed old man, Ken Longzi, smiled bitterly. Crippled Longzi. Killing intent flashed across forefather White Bones' face. 10,000 years ago, there were 5 rounds of civil war. The 5 soul transformation cultivators had all fallen. Don't tell me you're not dead. 5 rounds of civil war. The 5 soul transformation cultivators had all fallen. Crippled Longzi repeated forefather White Bones' words and laughed self-mockingly. Perhaps it's a good fate to fall. But forefather White Bones frowned. Soul transformation intermediate stage. That was the realm of crippled Longzi. In this realm, he was actually not forefather White Bones' opponent. However, don't forget that the 5 wheels had 5 soul transformation cultivators. Moreover, it was said that the strongest of the 5 wheels' 5 sons was a mute. Crippled Longzi was not dead. Then what about the other 4? If the 5 wheels' 5 sons were still alive, then the situation would be different. Forefather Whitebone's heart shook. Were all the good situations illusory? However, how could the Five Wheels' 5 sons still be alive? One must know that in the past 10,000 years, the Five Wheels could be said to have endless internal strife. The Five Wheels were in chaos. If there was a soul transformation cultivator, he would have suppressed everything. How could it have reached this point today? This was illogical. It was you who set up the Five Wheels formation? Forefather Whitebones suddenly thought of something. No. Crippled Longzi shook his head and sighed. I have not stepped into the Whitebones North region for 10,000 years. Hearing the words of the black-robed old man, Forefather Whitebones' heart turned cold, because that meant that there was at least one soul transformation cultivator in the Five Wheels. Middle stage soul transformation cultivator's lifespan is only about 10,000 years. Even if you did not die 10,000 years ago, how did you live until now? Forefather Whitebones asked again. Of course there is a way. Crippled Longzi smiled bitterly and looked at Forefather Whitebones. May I know your name? Because in Crippled Longzi's memory, the Selectan sect had always been suppressed by the Five Wheels. 30,000 years ago, after the Holy Will Patriarch created the Five Wheels, the Selectan sect never had a soul transformation cultivator again. I'm a half-dead man. Actually, I have no name. Forefather Whitebones was endlessly disappointed. But if you ask, have you heard of the 3 words, Chun Fu Bai? Chun Fu Bai? Hearing this, Crippled Longzi's expression suddenly changed. Is what you said true? Hee hee. Forefather Whitebones laughed coldly. I have lived for 40,000 years, and I have no name or identity. How can I use someone else's name? A transient dream. Chun Fu Bai. Nowadays, the disciples of the Five Wheels had long forgotten about their past, but Crippled Longzi knew. Martial uncle, please accept a bow from your martial nephew. Crippled Longzi dismounted from the white dragon beast. He actually knelt in the void and respectfully bowed to Forefather Whitebones. Forefather Whitebones looked coldly at Crippled Longzi. After a while, Forefather Whitebones did not speak. However, in his one eye, there seemed to be ice and fire colliding. The kind of gaze was absolutely indescribable. Who told you that I am your martial uncle? Forefather Whitebones was suppressing his emotions. Your master? Yes. Crippled Longzi nodded. When my master was alive, he had a sword called a transient dream. He used to rub it day and night, sighing incessantly. A transient dream. Ha ha. Forefather Whitebones, Chun Fu Bai, suddenly threw his head back and laughed. What a brilliant transient dream. Saint Wheel deceived his master and destroyed his ancestors. He was worse than pigs and dogs. But he still remembers me. Chun Fu Bai. Ha ha ha. This is truly a disgrace to me. There were tears in Chun Fu Bai's single eye. As he spoke, Chun Fu Bai flicked his sleeve and reached out with a single hand. It was a ghastly white bone. Suddenly, he grabbed towards Crippled Longzi. The white bones formed a claw, carrying with it the power of soul transformation. There seemed to be 5 beams of white light in the air. Even a late-stage nascent soul cultivator would be killed by that claw. Ken Longzi was in the middle stage of the soul transformation realm. In fact, he could totally avoid this claw. However, he actually knelt on the ground and did not move an inch. Master, disciple will solemnly abide by the sacred wheel's ancestral teachings. Those who meet Fu Bai are willing to be a ghost under the blade. Crippled Longzi recited silently in his heart and closed his eyes at the same time. 10,000 years was too bitter. It was better to die. Howl, roar. His master knelt motionlessly. The white dragon beast could not just watch as the opponent attacked and killed his master. As Forefather Whitebones, Chun Fu Bai, grabbed towards Crippled Longzi, the white dragon beast roared towards the sky and directly pounced towards Chun Fu Bai. Evil beast! Chun Fu Bai's other arm suddenly flicked his long sleeve like the clouds. The aura of the great perfection soul transformation realm was like a tornado. Although the white dragon beast was powerful, it still could not block a first-step deity tribulation cultivator. Whoosh! The white dragon beast's fat body was directly swept away by the wind for dozens of miles. Although it was not seriously injured, it was already impossible to save its master. Kill. Chapter 177. His 5 fingers pierced through the skull. Crippled Longzi knelt in the void and really didn't dodge. The first disciple of the Holy Wheel, crippled Longzi, had made up his mind at this moment. He was willing to die for his master's path. This was because there had to be someone among the 5 wheels who was responsible for the Holy Wheel's ancestral teachings. The position of the first disciple of the Holy Wheels seemed to be undeniable. Chen Fubai's eyes were cold and murderous. He did not want to show any mercy, nor would he show any mercy. 40,000 years of bitterness and hatred had been tormenting him. Back then, when Sheng Luan killed his fellow disciples, he was powerless. However, Sheng Luan didn't kill him. Chen Fubai saw with his own eyes that the white-boned divine sword was stained with the blood of his fellow disciples from the Selectan sect. For 40,000 years, day and night, he had never forgotten Sheng Luan's cold and bloodthirsty face. Destroying the 5 wheels was the sole purpose of his existence. Withered tree, undying art. Chen Fubai risked his life to cultivate the forbidden white bone technique so that he could personally take revenge. Because he was going to soul dissipate. Sheng Luanzi was already dead, so he could only vent his hatred on the 5th wheel disciple. He wanted to slaughter all the 5 wheels, just like how Sheng Luan had killed White Bones. Even if this wasn't the White Bones' ancestral master's celestial edict. But when Chen Fubai's 5 fingers were about to penetrate crippled Longzi's skull, his heart slightly trembled. Because crippled Longzi didn't dodge at all. An intermediate soul, transformation, realm, cultivator would not be so weak in front of him. Chen Fubai was confused, but he would not stop. However, at that moment, crippled Longzi resembled himself from back then. Back then, he was also willing to die under Sheng Luanzi's sword, not willing to see his fellow disciples killed. But he didn't get his wish. Sheng Luan didn't kill him, but let him witness everything. Chi-chi. With a piercing sound, Chen Fubai's 5 skeleton fingers were cold and scorching hot. He was finally going to kill a disciple of the 5 wheels with his own hands. Moreover, it was the first disciple of the Holy Wheel. Chen Fubai was momentarily dazed. However, at that moment, a long red ribbon suddenly flew over from the void. The long ribbon was like a wave that swept over with the chi of soul dissolving. It swept through the void and headed straight for Chen Fubai. Chen Fubai was surprised. This was indeed out of his expectations. A soul transformation rank attack forced him to retreat. Fortunately, that blood-red ribbon was only used to force Chen Fubai back. At the same time that Chen Fubai retreated, the long damask had already swept up crippled Longzi. Who is it? Chen Fubai stared intently. Kakik. Before the person in the void could be seen, the person asked first. Suddenly, a fragrance filled the air, and within the fragrance, an enchanting woman gradually appeared. The woman was wearing a long red robe, but her feet were bare. At the same time, her shoulders were bare and her breasts were exposed. Her black hair was like a waterfall, and her skin was whiter than snow. Her red lips were like fire, and her charming eyes were captivating. Red and white alternated, displaying an endless charm. Every smile and frown was enough to captivate one's soul. Her charm seeped into one's bones, and she was naturally amorous. She was definitely a stunner that could bring calamity to a country. Giggles reverberated through the air, almost causing one's blood to boil uncontrollably. Fortunately, Chen Fubai had perfected the soul transformation realm. After cultivating the withered tree undying technique, he was half human and half ghost, and his heart was already withered. Otherwise, this red-dressed woman's bewitching technique would have consumed a lot of his mental energy. "It's me," the red-dressed female cultivator replied to Chen Fubai's question. Her voice was soft and naturally seductive. This soft voice was about to captivate one's soul. At this moment, Chen Fubai's expression changed slightly. That was because he knew who the woman in front of him was. Red-dressed Yuji, Saint Wheel's third disciple, the founder of the Five Wheels water wheel lineage. Back then, before the Five Wheels was founded, countless male cultivators on the White Bone continent had died under her skirt. Legend had it that she was promiscuous, had countless male pets, and killed people like flies. Thus, Yu was known as the top witch of the White Bone continent. Seeing her today, Chun Fubai felt that she lived up to her reputation. Eldest senior brother, we haven't met in 10,000 years. You still haven't changed your stubbornness? Why? Did you just decide to follow the old master? Kakik. The red-dressed female cultivator's figure flashed, and she landed beside crippled Longzi, giggling. Junior sister Yuji. Crippled Longzi let out a long sigh. Why did you save me? If I die, I'll be able to answer to the ancestral teachings. Within the Five Wheels, no one can disrespect the ancestral teachings, right? Ancestral teachings? Who disrespects the ancestral teachings? Yuji's sneer carried a hint of seductiveness. The Saint Wheel's ancestral teachings have many words. Could it be that eldest senior brother only remembers one sentence? Those who meet Fubai are willing to be a ghost under the knife? Those who meet Fubai are willing to be a ghost under the knife. When Chun Fubai heard this, his single eye narrowed slightly. This is the ancestral teachings of the Five Wheels. Crippled Longzi smiled bitterly and nodded. Actually, Master has always felt guilty. Guilty? Hee. Chun Fubai sneered. I can feel guilty even if I kill all of the Five Wheels. Crippled Longzi shook his head and did not say anything. However, Yuji looked at Chun Fubai and smiled coldly. My senior brother is muddle-headed and treats people with sincerity. Actually, the Five Wheels does have this ancestral teaching. However, there's another sentence in the ancestral teaching. If the soul transformation stage comes out, it can be killed. Senior, you're on the list of people who must be killed. When Yuji appeared, her attitude was completely different from crippled Longzi. She had no respect for Chun Fubai at all. Ha ha. When Chun Fubai heard this, he could not help but laugh. If the soul transformation stage comes out, it can be killed. It seems that Shengluan probably did not expect that the weak and incompetent junior brother could also become a soul transformation stage cultivator. Otherwise, why would there be such contradictory ancestral teachings? Hee. Actually, Chun Fubai was right. The Five Wheels' ancestral teachings did indeed have many contradictions. Back then, Shengluan really did not expect Chun Fubai to actually cultivate the Deadwood Immortality technique. At this moment, Chun Fubai looked at crippled Longzi and Yuji, his eyes slightly narrowed. Back then, Shengluan had 5 disciples under him, and these 5 disciples were the leaders and created the Five Wheels. Today, since crippled Longzi and Yuji have already appeared, then the other 3 must have also arrived. Why don't all of you show yourselves? Chun Fubai sneered. Otherwise, it will be too troublesome to come out one by one. The current situation had already exceeded Chun Fubai's expectations. In front of him, crippled Longzi and Yuji were 2 middle-stage soul transformation stage cultivators. If the other 3 came out, then he definitely had no chance of winning. Especially the legendary Mute Warrior, who was the #1 expert below Shengluan. Both crippled Longzi and Yuji were already middle-stage soul transformation stage. As for the Mute Warrior, who was already in the late-stage soul transformation stage 10,000 years ago, who knew what realm he was in now. In this way, even if Chun Fubai was already in the perfected soul transformation stage, it would be difficult for him to win. Could it be that the fate of the Five Wheels was not exhausted, and the Selectan sect was in danger? Actually, to Chun Fubai and Bai Lai just now, the best way was to defeat them one by one and end the battle quickly. Therefore, he wanted to kill crippled Longzi. However, the appearance of Yuji made everything difficult. At this moment, Chun Fubai did not want to see the Five Wheels soul transformation stage cultivators in the dark, so he decided to challenge them to a decisive battle. Because what he was most afraid of was that if any of the Five Wheels soul transformation cultivators were not restrained by him, then all the white bone cultivators that attacked the 5 will sect might not be able to return. The situation was changing rapidly. At this moment, Yuji looked in the direction of the Windwheel Mountain, but she said to crippled Longzi, "Eldest senior brother, has junior brother Feng not appeared yet?" Crippled Longzi shook his head. Yuji's eyes were full of sorrow and lingering. "The Windwheel rises. It is time for me to return." Chapter 178. The wind was blowing, the autumn water was piercing. My dear friend's journey was long. 10,000 years would pass. There was wind in the air. There were people above the clouds. Yuji was dressed in red, looking at the Windwheel Mountain. There was no doubt that Yuji was a peerless beauty. Her eyes were filled with boundless love. However, even she could not see through the green mist formation of the Windwheel Mountain. It really looked like a painting of a green mountain. Boom, boom, whoosh, rumble. The 5 wheels swept across the ancestral spirit peak. At this moment, the nascent soul cultivators of the 5 wheels and Whitebone sects had already started fighting. This battle was far greater than any of the sects' battles. The power of the nascent soul was like a hurricane. All kinds of great techniques covered the sky. In terms of numbers, the Selectin sect had 2 more people, and in terms of cultivation level, the 5 wheels was slightly stronger. In a short period of time, it was hard to tell who was stronger. However, the Selectin sect gradually gained the upper hand. The 9 nascent soul cultivators had gradually suppressed the 7 ancestors of the ancestral spirit peak. The blind ancestor had the highest cultivation level among the 2 sections. The peak late-stage nascent soul cultivator was a soul transformation cultivator. The blind ancestor knew that he could never become a soul transformation cultivator. This was because he had lived for too many years through a secret technique. On the ancestral spirit peak, he was the oldest nascent soul cultivator. However, ever since he took charge of the 5 wheels, the 5 wheels could be said to be in a decline. The burden of the 5 wheels was too heavy for him. He had always wanted to be the carefree and happy blind person of the past. He was tired of all the deceit and intrigue. He had thought of giving up many times. However, he could not forget the kindness of his master. He did not want to let down his master's trust. He was originally an abandoned blind child who was carried by his master to the 5 wheels. From then on, he became a cultivator. His master was clearly on the 5 wheels. Why did he not show up? That day, when he led Sumo into the Windwheel, his master also told him, "Blind, do not worry. Your master is with you." But now, the 5 wheels is almost destroyed. Where's master? The blind man could not understand. He even regretted letting the nascent soul on the ancestral soul take action. Even if it was a life and death struggle, it might be better than the current situation. Boom! Just as the blind patriarch was deep in thought, the 2 nascent soul stage cultivators from the Selectin sect actually joined forces and slashed one of the nascent soul stage cultivators from the 5 wheels into the void. The death of a nascent soul was like a meteor streaking across the sky. Nascent soul cultivators were definitely grand cultivators of the Bone Continent. It has to be said that a normal cultivator would need hundreds or even thousands of years to reach the nascent soul realm. Cultivators who could cultivate to the nascent soul stage were 1 in 10,000. Which nascent soul cultivator wasn't an elite in the past? Which nascent soul cultivator wasn't all-powerful back then? The death of a nascent soul cultivator was extremely tragic. The cultivators on the 5 wheels were, of course, incomparably terrified. The disciples of the Selectin sect were also somewhat sympathetic. However, this was a battle, and there were bound to be casualties. Junior Brother Long shouted another nascent soul realm cultivator on 5 wheels. This was because the nascent soul cultivator who had just fallen was of the same lineage as him. Puff! However, the moment he shouted, a voice suddenly rang out. An immortal sword directly pierced through his immortal heart. Everything happened in an instant when a nascent soul cultivator attacked. Boom! At the same time, a nascent soul cultivator from the Selectin sect was blasted into pieces by a late-stage nascent soul cultivator from the 5 wheels. A total of 3 nascent soul cultivators from the 2 sects had fallen. In an instant, The entire situation had reached a boiling point. At the moment, the Selectan sect had 8 nascent soul cultivators and 5 wheels were left. If this continued, the 5 wheels would definitely lose, and the Selectan sect would also be greatly weakened. In the air, Chun Fubai frowned. He didn't want the Selectan sect to exhaust itself like this. Yu, however, looked at Chun Fubai and smiled. Senior, if you don't make a move, we won't either. If you do, the soul disintegration cultivator from the 5 wheels will start a massacre. Unless you're confident that you can kill us all in an instant. Otherwise, before you kill us all, no one from a Selectan sect will be left alive. Because there is only one soul disintegration cultivator in the Selectan sect. Yuji licked her red lips seductively. That action was filled with a thirst for blood. Half of Chun Fubai's face twitched. He really couldn't kill 2 mid-stage soul disintegration cultivators in an instant, not to mention that there was at least 1 soul disintegration cultivator in the 5 wheels. The Grand Cultivator who set up the 5 wheels formation had yet to show himself, and he must be inside the 5 wheels. Boom! Crack! Another 2 meteors fell from the sky. On the ancestral spirit peak, another nascent soul cultivator from the 5 wheels and the Selectan sect had fallen. At this moment, the blind patriarch sighed in his heart. He seemed to have no other choice. A Taoist technique appeared in his hand. It was an earth-shattering grand technique. Peak nascent, soul late stage. A halo suddenly appeared around the blind patriarch's body to protect him. At that moment, his power was as majestic as the ocean. All the nascent soul power was mobilized by him. The entire ancestral spirit peak was shaking. It was a kind of resonance. Senior brother blind. Senior brother blind. The remaining 3 nascent soul cultivators of the 5 wheels shouted at the same time, because they knew that the blind patriarch had a secret technique, ancestral soul destruction. That Taoist technique used one's body as a guide to unleash the power of the entire ancestral spirit peak. Once the power of the ancestral spirit peak was unleashed, the 5 wheels would be razed to the ground, and none of the cultivators present would survive. It was a mutual destruction technique. Only the blind patriarch could use the entire 5 wheels. Therefore, the 3 nascent soul cultivators' expressions changed drastically. The nascent soul cultivators of the Selectan sect also had a bad feeling, but none of them had the ability to stop the blind patriarch. In the sky, Chun Fubai couldn't care less. He couldn't let the blind patriarch use that technique. In an instant, he dove down toward the ancestral spirit peak. There were 2 rays of light behind him, one black and one red. A soul transformation realm cultivator had finally made his move. In the air, the power of the soul transformation realm spread out and covered the nascent soul aura from before. At that moment, everyone's gaze turned toward the sky. A white ray of light shot down toward the ancestral spirit peak. Many cultivators couldn't even see what it was. However, the blind patriarch instantly felt the pressure of the soul transformation realm. His technique stopped midway. My life is over. The blind patriarch had no way of resisting such a powerful soul transformation realm cultivator. On Tianlun Mountain, Yang Tianxiao and Yin Zhoumo's expressions changed. Yang Tianxiao didn't expect a soul transformation realm cultivator to appear. Would the situation where the 5 wheels and white bones were both heavily injured still happen? Yin Zhoumo was thinking in his heart, Patriarch, are you still not going to show yourself? If I were you, I wouldn't mind dying for the 5 wheels. They were both ambitious people, but their thoughts were different at the last moment. At that crucial moment, the ground beneath Tianlun Mountain suddenly shook and a bright light exploded out. A white-haired old man charged into the sky. Whitebone's soul transformation realm, you dare to offend my 5 wheels. I will kill you according to the instructions of my ancestors. Similarly, a ray of white light shot toward Shinfubai. The soul transformation realm battle was about to begin. Chapter 179. Great Perfection Late Soul Transformation Realm. That was the pinnacle existence of the Bone Continent. After all, there were only a handful of deity tribulation stage cultivators in the entire Bone continent. Back then, Sheng Luan was only at the peak late-stage soul transformation realm. At this moment, Chun Fubai charged towards the ancestral spirit peak with the force of wind and lightning. This was definitely a power that nascent soul cultivators couldn't resist. If there were no soul dispersers to resist, Chun Fubai alone would be enough to destroy the entire five-wheel sect. However, the five wheels had soul dispersers, and not just one of them. Boom! Crack! At the foot of the Earth Wheel Mountain, the white-haired patriarch who had been dormant for 10,000 years soared into the sky and headed straight for Chun Fubai. Late-stage soul transformation realm. Chun Fubai was shocked, because the soul transformation cultivator who suddenly rushed out was not that mute cultivator. Late-stage soul transformation realm, of course, he still couldn't compare to Chun Fubai, but he definitely had the ability to fight him. One swooped down, the other met it head-on. Boom! Boom! Two great soul transformation forms, two powerful forces fiercely collided. At that moment, it was as if the heavens were being split apart. Whoosh! Spiritual energy spread out, surging like the sea. Even the dozen or so nascent soul cultivators who were fighting just now had to retreat and defend themselves. With the ancestral spirit peak as the center, endless power roared out in all directions. 1,000 feet of light, rolling clouds, toppling mountains, and overturning seas. At the center of the power, Chun Fubai was dressed in a snow-white robe, but he was half human and half ghost. The Earth Wheel Great Ancestor was dressed in a brownish-yellow robe. His face was pale and bloodless. Second senior brother, Yuji was already behind Chun Fubai. The Earth Wheel Ancestor was the second disciple of Sheng Luan, Niexiang. This Niexiang had a tyrannical personality. He was the most unruly in the past. His attitude toward the Slekton sect was simple. Those who obey me will prosper, and those who oppose me will perish. After the death of Shenglun, he did as he pleased. The five-wheel Great Formation was his masterpiece. He originally wanted to gather the souls of the 5 chakras and the chi of the 5 chakras to form the deity tribulation body. Unfortunately, man proposes, God disposes. One of the 5 soul-gathering pearls was missing. Previously, he had been waiting and pinning his hopes on Injongmo obtaining the soul-gathering pearl. Unfortunately, it seemed impossible at the moment. The deity tribulation was hopeless. Niexiang's lifespan was less than 100 days. Therefore, in the end, he chose to rush out of the Earthwheel Mountain. This meant that he had given up on the formation eye of the 5-wheel formation and his last hope of survival. He could only fight to the death for the 5 rounds. On Tianluan Mountain, Injongmo heaved a long sigh, and a rare look of respect appeared in his eyes. This was because he understood that the Earthwheel Ancestor had ultimately chosen the 5 wheels. Who, at this moment, the red caltrip in Yuji's hand shook like a red snake. He swept up the soul, dissolving power, and charged at Chun Fubai. Yuji did not have the same temperament as Kenlongzi. Yuji had too much of a demonic nature about her. It was good enough that she didn't kill others. How could she let others kill her? Even with the teachings of the sacred wheel, she would choose to follow it. What's this about? Those who see the floating white are willing to be a ghost under the knife. To Yuji, that was a joke. She, Yuji, could only remember one thing. If his soul came out, she could kill him. This ancestral teaching was before the pedantic ancestral teaching. Therefore, she showed no mercy. The red caltrip was like a blood knife. Anyone who touched it would die. Among all the people in the world, Yuji wanted to listen to Junior Marshall Brother Phone. If Junior Marshall Brother Phone died, she would be willing to die. However, that enemy did not show up. The Earthwheel Ancestor Niexiang was at the late stage of soul transformation. Chun Fubai was not afraid, but there were still 2 middle-stage soul transformation cultivators chasing him. Yuji's red caltrip flew over. Chun Fubai did not even turn his head and only snorted coldly. Then, he suddenly formed a seal with both hands. Who? A beam of white light shot out from Chun Fubai's back. Then, the white light took form. It was actually a cultivator in white, another Qin Fubai. However, this Qin Fubai was younger and a complete person. He was as handsome as Jade and extremely handsome. Holding a silver spear, he directly met Yuji's red caltrip. Soul-dissolving body. Yuji could not help but praise Qin Fubai in her heart. Kinlongzi originally did not want to make a move, but now he had no choice but to make a move, because the ancestral teaching indeed wrote, if a soul-dissolving body comes out, he can be killed. Moreover, the situation at this moment was already somewhat out of control. Soul-dissolving body fighting. He could not just stand by and watch. Boom! Pa! Kinlongzi waved the whip in his hand like a black bolt of lightning. In the void, lightning flashed and thunder roared. That whip was a soul transformation level divine weapon, and its power was extraordinary. And behind Qin Fubai, a white light once again shone out. This time, it wasn't another Qin Fubai. Instead, it was a skeleton. That skeleton wielded a long dagger axe, emitting a soaring aura of death, and charged straight at Kinlongzi. Soul, transformation, great perfection. 3 souls in one breath. However, Qin Fubai cultivated the Deadwood Undying technique, causing Qin Fubai's 3 souls to be somewhat special. 1 cultivator, 1 human, 1 ghost. That Qin Fubai was indeed a first-step deity tribulation cultivator. Now, that he was using a shocking technique, even 1 against 3, he was not at a disadvantage. Soul, transformation, great perfection was indeed a terrifying existence. At this moment, all the spectating cultivators found it hard to breathe or hear, because the pressure of a soul-dissolving body was too powerful. This battle had completely exceeded everyone's expectations and imagination. Selected sect leader by Zongshin and the Green Robe Ancestor both had solemn expressions. No matter what, they had not expected that in this battle, 3 soul-dissolving bodies would suddenly appear on 5 wheels. But why did they not make a move just now? Could it be that this was the reason why so many cultivators of 5 wheels would rather die than surrender? At this moment, the blind ancestor and the others were even more shocked. The appearance of the 3 5 wheels soul transformation patriarchs was equivalent to announcing the reversal of 5 wheels. But what about Master? Blind was still puzzled? Were the patriarchs who had left back, then, all returning? Could it be that the 5 great patriarchs of 5 wheels were still alive? That was the heyday of 5 wheels. Then in these 10,000 years, why did no one care about 5 wheels? Blind's heart was filled with endless mysteries. But no matter what, 5 wheels should no longer be at the mercy of others. The appearance of the soul-dissolving bodies had changed the situation and even the nature of this battle. At this moment, Guan Xiong, who was still watching from the void, had a somewhat solemn expression, because he suddenly felt that everything did not seem so simple. Everything that happened with 5 wheels was too abnormal. Illogical. If things were abnormal, there must be something wrong. With 3 great soul-dissolving bodies, they actually sat back and did nothing about the destruction of their sect. If the opponent's soul-dissolving cultivators did not make a move, they would not make a move. Why was this so? In the void, the power of the soul-dissolving bodies spread throughout the 5 wheels. 4 top experts used their great techniques. Qin Fubai really did have some shocking methods. 1 split into 3. Other than his main body that had reached the late stage of the soul-dissolving realm, the other 2 were both in the middle stage of the soul-dissolving realm. It had to be said that Qin Fubai had endured for 40,000 years just for this day. Originally, he was wary of the 5 wheels formation. However, he didn't expect that someone would accidentally break through the 5-wheel great formation. In this battle, Qin Fubai had completely let go. Since he had already made a move, then there was no need to worry too much. Kill. This was the only question in his mind. He wanted to kill like Saint Will back then. But at this moment, Guan Xiong's expression changed once again, because he suddenly realized that the entire 5 wheels immortal domain was gently moving up and down, but the people of 5 wheels and white bones did not realize this. It was like a person recovering his breathing. Guan Xiong's expression completely changed. Chapter 180. In the air, Guan Xiong locked his eyes. At this moment, the aura of the entire Five Paths immortal realm was changing. The change was inexplicable and inexplicable. However, Guan Xiong only realized it after the four soul transformation cultivators attacked. The aura of the soul transformation cultivators seemed to have alerted something. What was that? The Five Paths immortal realm once again undulated rhythmically. Guan Xiong's spirit sense was far more sensitive than anyone else. The undulation of the Five Paths immortal realm was not something anyone from the Five Wheels or Select and Sect could feel. Not even the soul transformation cultivators. Guan Xiong formed a seal with both hands, and his eyes were filled with lightning. At this moment, the geography of the entire Bone mainland, the mountains and rivers, were reflected in Guan Xiong's eyes. Although his eyes were small, they were really bright. Look to the north. The entire Select and Sect immortal realm was also slightly undulating. However, the undulation seemed to be after the Five Paths immortal realm. Look to the south. Luckily, there was no movement in the Bone mainland for the time being. Guan Xiong's expression turned slightly better, because it was not the entire Bone mainland that was moving. Otherwise, he, as the Bone Patrol envoy, would not be able to control the situation. The Bone mainland was like a person lying on its side. Guan Xiong thought of the legend of the Bone mainland and shuddered. However, as the soul transformation cultivators fought and the aura of the soul transformation cultivators were released, the Five Wheels undulated more and more. This undulation would soon be felt by the soul transformation cultivators, then the nascent soul cultivators, then the core formation cultivators, and finally all the cultivators would feel the abnormality. Because it was not a simple earthquake, but a kind of awakening. Was the sleeping earth awakening? At this moment, Guan Xiong was no longer as wretched as before. He seemed to understand why the Five Wheels cultivators did not make a move. Because they did not want to alert the souls of the Bone mainland. Guan Xiong could not just sit and watch. Boom! Crack! Boom! The battle in the ancestral soul void became even more intense. The four soul transformation cultivators actually cast a powerful spell at the same time. Crippled Longzi, the Earth Wheel ancestor, and Yu Ji all had a tacit understanding. The three grandmasters of the Five Wheels exerted their strength at the same time. Black, red, and yellow streaks of soul dissolving chi shot toward Chun Fubai from three different directions. At this moment, Chun Fubai was smiling coldly. His true body, human body, and skeleton body formed a triangle. The three of them were one. In an instant, the aura of the great perfection of the soul transformation realm flowed between the three souls. Chun Fubai's three souls each swept up a powerful force and went up against the three forefathers of the Five Wheels. Boom! Boom! Crack! 6 streams of chi suddenly collided. At that moment, the entire Five Wheels mountain range shook. This happened to conceal the breathing rhythm of the entire Five Paths immortal domain. The clash between the four patriarchs was no longer a contest of magical techniques, but a contest of pure spiritual power. After the 6 streams of air collided, they converged into 3 streams, which then soared into the sky. At the same time, the 3 patriarchs on the Five Wheels were sent flying. Even they couldn't completely withstand the turbulence of the airflow. Wow-woo! Crippled Longzi and Yu Ji landed tens of miles away, spurting out blood. Niexiang's pale face turned purplish red. It was obvious that all 3 were injured, but their reactions were different. Looking again, Chun Fubai's 3 souls had already merged into one. However, half of his face was as pale as paper, and the light on the other half of his skeleton body dimmed slightly. Chun Fubai was the only one who could withstand the attacks of the 3 soul transformation realm experts. If it was anyone else, it would be difficult. This was a situation where both sides were injured. However, it seemed that Chun Fubai still had a slight advantage. At the same time, Chun Fubai raised his skeletal arm again. His 5 fingers were sinister and cold. He decided to use all his strength to kill one person and then think of other plans. At that moment, Even Guan Xiong felt the power of the soul transformation realm soaring into the sky. However, at the same time, Guan Xiong also saw two beams of light suddenly rushing up from the two mountain peaks of the Selectant sect. The essence rushing up to the sky. It was a strange phenomenon. What's the White Eye Peak? The White Eye Peak's strange phenomenon. There were still some disciples stationed in the Selectant sect. They also saw the two beams of light rushing up. The Selectant sect had two White Eye Peaks, one on the left and one on the right. However, no one knew what kind of light it was. They only felt that the two beams of light were very strange. 5 Wheels Mountain Gate Abode. Actually, there were people in a Mountain Gate Abode. It was just that when Sumo came, she could not see them, because Sumo's cultivation level was still not high enough. Just now, there was a deep sigh coming from inside the abode. Inside the abode, there were people and there was wine. On the stone table, there were 4 dishes and a jar of aged wine. The dishes were delicious, and the wine was fragrant. 3 people were sitting around the table, talking and laughing. Judging from the dishes on the table, the drinking had been going on for quite some time. Among the 3 people, one of them was a young man wearing a gray robe, and he looked to be about 17 or 18 years old. His lips were red, his teeth white, and he had delicate features. At this moment, his cheeks were slightly red, and he seemed to be a little drunk. However, his eyes were clear. The other person was a middle-aged cultivator in a white robe. He had a dignified appearance, and his face was like jade. He held a folding fan in his hand, and his eyes were quite elegant. At this moment, the middle-aged cultivator was holding a cup with one hand, and his eyes were looking at the stone wall of the sect abode thoughtfully. The other person was actually Bai Lai. Bai Lai was wearing a shabby white robe, and he looked sloppy. At this moment, the cups and plates in front of him were messy, and he seemed to be very drunk. However, Bai Lai was still gesticulating and pointing. His mouth flowed like a river. Look, this is the so-called Holy Wheel Ancestral Behest. Which one of you can understand it? Hee, how is this ancestral behest? It's clearly the mystery of the Holy Wheel. Hee. Bai Lai picked up a cup of wine, drank it in one gulp, and said with a sarcastic tone. However, it was not known whether he was mocking himself for not understanding it, or mocking the Holy Will Ancestral Master for being too vague. At the same time, he waved one hand. On the stone wall of the Mountain Gate Abode, the lines of ancient characters shone again. These ancient characters were written in an ancient style, but they were also messy and profound. Obviously, the person who left these words must have wanted to be concise, but his thoughts were in a mess, and he wanted to say something but stopped. The book said, "Don't ask about the past of the White Bones. Don't ask about the future of the 5 Wheels. Kill for the sake of all living beings. I have no regrets in this life. After 100,000 years of peace, what crime have I committed? My 5 disciples must leave the 5 Wheels. If their souls come out, they can be killed. A tribulation every 30,000 years. No one can return. Those who meet Fubai are willing to be ghosts under the knife." Huh. Bai Lai pointed at the lines of ancient characters, then looked at the young man and the middle-aged cultivator and said, "Which one of you can understand this so-called Holy Wheel Ancestral Behest?" Back then, it was because we had a different understanding of the last ancestral behest. The 5 disciples of the Holy Wheel fell apart and went their separate ways. Bai Lai continued. Hee. The middle-aged cultivator in white spoke first, and couldn't help but laugh. What separate ways? That and yes, Yang, and you didn't leave, right? It's just that no one in the 5 Wheels can recognize you. My 5 disciples must leave the 5 Wheels. A tribulation every 30,000 years. No one can return. The young man in white also laughed and said, "But you 5 disciples of the Holy Wheel are really unfilial. 2 of you didn't even leave the 5 Wheels, and you actually all returned after the tribulation every 30,000 years. Hee, if I were the Holy Will Ancestral Master, I wouldn't let you unfilial children off after reincarnation." Huh. When Bai Lai heard the young man say this, he couldn't help but laugh. The 5 Wheels Ancestral Behest is nothing. Chapter 181. I'm not a 5 Wheel cultivator. I can't repay my master's kindness in this life. Bai Lai let out a long sigh. The middle-aged cultivator in white, looked at Bai Lai and sneered. Old Bai, since you know your master's kindness, why are you still hesitating? Although your origin is not in the five-wheel, you've been blessed by the five-wheel in this life. Now that the five-wheel is in chaos, how can you sit back and watch? Although the Holy Wheel Ancestral Behest didn't say it clearly, the Holy Wheel Ancestral Master probably doesn't want the five-wheel to be destroyed. Bai Lai, you have to take action against the five-wheel tribulation. The plain-clothed young man looked at Bai Lai and said solemnly, End your fate. Your wind will go back to where it belongs. However, this white skeleton must not be awakened. With that, the plain-clothed young man waved his hand. The Holy Wheel Ancestral Behest disappeared and was replaced by a bird's-eye view of the White Skeleton Continent. The White Skeleton Continent was located in the southeast of the Pure Land. It was shaped like a crescent moon, but it also looked like a person lying on his side. However, the person's body was half-twisted, and he seemed to be looking at something. On the ribs of the White Skeleton Continent, there was a faint purple light. That was the location of the Holy Wheel Ruins in the White Bone Ridge. Overlooking the White Bone Continent, it was a very strange scene. The four sides of the Bone Continent were pitch black, and nothing could be seen on the map. The plain-clothed young man seemed to have only shown the appearance of the White Skeleton Continent. According to the legends, the White Skeleton Continent was surrounded by an endless, eternal sky trench. There were thousands of ancient beasts and demons in the eternal sky trench, and only the deity Tribulation Body could fly through it. At this moment, in the north of the White Skeleton Continent, the head of the human figure emitted two faint rays of light. It was a pair of eyes. At the same time, the chest of the human figure rose and fell slightly. That was the location of the five-wheel immortal domain. Bai Lai, look. The plain-clothed young man pointed at the white skeleton map. The location of the five wheels basically belongs to the five internal organs of this skeleton. I think the Holy Will Ancestral Master must have had a deeper meaning when he created the five wheels. Maybe he wants to use the power of the five wheels to suppress white bones. However, the soul-dissolving chi will disturb white bone. This was probably the reason why white bone and five chakras could not have soul transformation realm cultivators. Saint Will might know the secret of the bone continent. The plain-clothed youth speculated. The white-robed cultivator remained silent. The plain-clothed youth's conjecture made some sense, but it couldn't explain everything. However, there was no better way to put it. At this time, Bai Lai wiped his tears and looked at the map again. He smiled bitterly and said, a skeleton can actually give birth to all living things. The white bone continent was also a miracle. What a pity for these soulless skeletons. Even if it doesn't have a soul, it's still a creature of the Pure Land. We can't just sit and watch. The white-robed, middle-aged cultivator sighed. The plain-clothed youth and Bai Lai both nodded. What about Mu Jinghong? Bai Lai asked again. Unfortunately, we can't see through Mu Jinghong's background. However, she seemed to have another request. Just now, she was clearly asking for death, since she barged into the windwheel array. Then let the 9 revolutions windwheel send you guys on your way, the white-robed cultivator said. That way, it can also temper Sumo's character. The white-robed cultivator looked at Bai Lai and added, those with a soul naturally have nothing to worry about. The plain-clothed youth chuckled. Sumo, it's all up to him now. Bai Lai smiled bitterly and raised his wine glass. That's right. Sumo, it's all up to him now. The plain-clothed youth and the white-robed cultivator raised their wine glasses at the same time. The three of them clinked their glasses and looked at each other and laughed loudly. Then, the three of them stood up at the same time and walked out of the cave. Bai Lai walked in front, in the void of the ancestral spirit peak. Chun Fubai moved and turned into a ray of white light, heading straight for the red-robed Yuji. Compared to crippled Longzi and Niexiang, Yuji's combat strength should be the weakest. Among the 5 great disciples of Shenglin, the first disciple, crippled Longzi, was an expert in taming beasts and was a spirit cultivator. However, crippled Longzi didn't let the white dragon divine beast participate in the battle. Otherwise, his battle prowess would be comparable to the soul transformation late stage. The second disciple, Nie Xiang, had a violent personality. It could be seen from the fact that he wanted to borrow the living beings of the five wheels to help him pass the God tribulation. Their techniques were all methods of great annihilation and slaughter. Now that he was in the late stage of the soul transformation realm, he was definitely not easy to deal with. The fourth disciple, the mute warrior, was rumored to have a high cultivation level and was proficient in all kinds of techniques. However, he never spoke a single word in his life. His actions spoke for him. This time, he did not show himself. The fifth disciple, Feng Shi, was mysterious and unrestrained. It was rumored that his wisdom was unparalleled, and he could deduce the past and future. He was proficient in invincible formations. However, he rarely fought with others and was unfathomable. This time, Feng Shi didn't show up either. In terms of combat power, the third disciple, Yu Ji, was the weakest among the five Holy Wheel disciples, because Yu Ji cultivated in the art of bewitchment. Although she was also at the intermediate stage of the soul transformation realm, she would be at a disadvantage in a life-and-death battle like today. Chen Fubai was a half-withered man, and his will was extremely strong. Her bewitching technique was completely ineffective, using one's weakness to attack one's strength. How could he not be at a disadvantage? At this moment, Chen Fubai saw this point. After being injured, he went straight for Yu Ji. His 5 skeletal fingers were surrounded by white light. The power of the soul transformation realm condensed at his fingertips, and he went straight for Yu Ji's head. Yu Ji spat out a mouthful of blood, staining her red clothes. She did not expect Chen Fubai's 3 souls to combine into one and go straight for her. This time, it was too late for her to dodge, because her speed could no longer be faster than Chen Fubai's. She could only block. Go! The red caltrip in Yu Ji's hand shook. The red caltrip turned into a circle and wrapped around Chen Fubai's skeletal arm like waves. Chen Fubai snorted coldly, not taking it seriously at all. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Yu Ji held the red caltrip in her hand and rolled it. The red caltrip really wrapped around Chen Fubai's skeletal arm. Restrain, Yu Ji shouted coldly. The red caltrip instantly tightened like a red rope, and it quickly tightened. Although Yu Ji's red caltrip was not a soul transformation realm divine weapon, it was still an extraordinary treasure. At this moment, if it was an ordinary item, it would have been turned to dust under the restraint of the red caltrip. However, Chen Fubai's skeletal arm did not move at all. At the same time, a strange light flashed in Chen Fubai's single eye, and he shouted, "Immortal flame!" Whoosh, whoosh. In an instant, Chen Fubai's skeletal arm was ablaze with endless white flames. Whoosh! Yu Ji's red caltrip was ignited. Yu Ji quickly withdrew the red caltrip. Even so, half of the red caltrip had been burned. Immortal flame. That was Chen Fubai's secret technique. He only used it at the most crucial moment. It was indeed effective. Yu Ji was caught off guard. Chen Fubai's 5 skeletal fingers were already 3 inches away from Yu Ji's head. Just a slight touch, and Yu Ji would definitely die. Nie Xiang's heavy punch and crippled Longzi's black whip were all heading for Chen Fubai. However, they were too late. In an instant, a soft shout came from the void. Feng Shi is here. Who dares to act rashly? Whoosh. Chapter 182. The soul transformation skeleton was comparable to a heaven-grade weapon. However, the paper fan that was flying over from afar was even more powerful than that. Chi, chi, crack. The paper fan flew over with a white light that was as thin as a cicada's wing. Chen Fubai's 5 skeleton fingers were cut off. That scene instantly shocked everyone. Chen Fubai's expression changed drastically. What kind of fan was that? However, there was no light from a Dharma treasure on the paper fan. Moreover, it flew back directly at this moment. Boom! Pa! At the same time, Nie Xiang's heavy punch and Ken Longzi's black whip landed almost at the same time. However, Chen Fubai instantly neutralized the 2 attacks. In the void, the aura of the soul transformation realm spread out again. The undulation of the five paths immortal realm seemed to be more rapid. Chun Fubai looked in the direction where the paper fan came from. Yu took the opportunity to fly back hundreds of meters. Who dared to act rashly with Feng Shi here? That soft shout was the one that Yu had been longing for. Junior brother Feng. Yu turned to look. However, she didn't see the young man in her memory. Instead, she saw a sloppy and wretched old man. That old man was Bai Lai. Feng Shi. Yuji's expression changed. He was too different from the image in her memory. Could it be that even a soul transformation realm expert couldn't maintain his appearance after 10,000 years? I'm Feng Shi. Greetings, senior brothers and senior sister Yuji. Bai Lai cupped his fists in the void. Then, he took one step at a time, very slowly. He was holding the paper fan in his hand. However, the image of Bai Lai holding a paper fan was very awkward no matter how one looked at it. There seemed to be no aura coming from Bai Lai. Ken Longzi looked at Bai Lai and frowned. Junior brother Feng? Because Bai Lai was too different from the handsome junior brother Feng of the past. However, he could feel that it was really Feng Shi. Junior brother Feng? Ha! Nies Yang, the Earth Wheel ancestor, sneered. Feng Shi, you've been hiding well for the past 10,000 years. You actually didn't follow the teachings of the sacred wheel? Same to you. Bai Lai laughed. Second senior brother, we haven't left the five wheels yet, right? It's just that I can see the light every day, but you can't bear to part with the five-wheel restriction formation. 10,000 years of darkness. You are really bitter. Bai Lai laughed. Oof. Nies Yang did not say anything else, because if he tried to force his way out, only death awaited him. If not for Chun Fubai's intervention today, he probably would not have come out of the formation. Wind wheel, founding master. Whoosh! At that moment, everyone on five wheels was dumbfounded. There was even an endless uproar. Wasn't that Bai Lai? The old beggar Bai Lai was the legendary wind wheel patriarch, Feng Shi. This fact was even more unacceptable than the invasion of the Selectant sect. Within five wheels, Bai Lai was a celebrity. The cultivators and child cultivators who were lucky enough to survive on Yangjin Peak felt dizzy. The inner sect cultivators who had dealt with Bai Lai before also grimaced in pain. All of this was too unreal. After all, many of them had beaten and cursed Bai Lai. They beat and cursed Windwheel, founding Master Feng Shi. At the thought of it, they felt that they had courted death. At that moment, the blind patriarch was also shocked. Although he was blind, he was not affected at all. After all, Bai Lai's appearance was not the same as the master who had given him pointers that day. The blind patriarch's master had always been a white-robed middle-aged cultivator. What was going on? The appearance of Bai Lai shocked everyone. You're not Feng Shi. Yuji stared at Bai Lai. How did the Feng Shi like become an old beggar? Yuji was a peerless beauty with endless elegance. Bai Lai was embarrassed. Senior sister Yuji, I've lived for 10,000 years. How can I be like you? I still look the same. Sigh. I'm old. Bai Lai let out a long sigh. So, you still... Bai Lai had his own difficulties. Bai Lai was afraid of Yuji. Yuji's enthusiasm was too much for Feng Shi. However, Yuji narrowed her eyes slightly. A charming smile suddenly appeared at the corner of her mouth. She knew Feng Shi's character too well. Her woman's intuition told her that there must be something wrong. There was no way Feng Shi would look like this. Bai Lai was just a facade. At that moment, Chun Fubai looked at Bai Lai coldly and then raised his broken skeleton hand. When he looked again, the skeletal hand was actually surrounded by white light. In an instant, the white bone regenerated with a cracking sound. Everything was as good as before. Chun Fubai was indeed not ordinary. Perfected soul, transformation realm, 3 souls in one breath. Chun Fubai looked at Bai Lai. However, his tone was a little uncertain. That was because he really could not see through Bai Lai's realm. However, he could vaguely see that there were 2 souls in Bai Lai's body. One was a young man in a linen robe, and the other was a middle-aged cultivator in a white robe. However, the 2 souls did not really show up. 3 souls in one breath in the cave abode. Chun Fubai was right. Bai Lai indeed had 3 souls. In fact, the 3 people who drank with each other in the cave abode were the same person. Bai Lai had his own inner struggle about the 5 wheels, the sacred wheel ancestral behest, and his own choice. The conversation between the 3 people was just Bai Lai answering his own questions. Bai Lai, or Feng Shi, had always been a loner of the 5 wheels. He only had the wind wheel lineage. He, Bai Lai looked at Chun Fu Bai with a smile and said, "Who says that 3 souls in one breath must be at the perfected soul transformation realm?" Chun Fu Bai was stunned. For a moment, he did not understand what Bai Lai meant. Could it be that the 5 wheels still had some secret technique? As soon as Bai Lai appeared, all the soul transformation chi had been restrained. However, the entire 5 wheels immortal realm and the select insect immortal realm were gradually calming down. Just now, the increasingly rapid ups and downs were slowing down. Guanxiong looked at Bai Lai in the void and could not help but sigh and mutter to himself. Bai Lai? Feng Shi? He. As expected, he lives up to his reputation. I'm ashamed. Because with Guanxiong's ability, Bai Lai could actually come and go as he pleased all these years, without the slightest flaw. Guanxiong did not see through Bai Lai's foundation at all. Bai Lai, you actually cultivated the heart of the mundane world. Chun Fu Bai, you've lost this battle. Guanxiong looked to the north, then at the Windwheel Mountain. There was no result at the Windwheel Mountain. The battle at the Ancestral Spirit Peak should have lost its meaning the moment Bai Lai appeared. In the void above the Ancestral Spirit Peak. White Bone Forbidden Technique, Deadwood Undying Technique. Bai Lai looked at Chun Fu Bai and shook his head with a sigh. A pity. A pity about what? Chun Fu Bai asked. A pity that you, Chun Fu Bai, cultivated a forbidden technique for 40,000 years. However, the outcome might not be what you think. Bai Lai's gaze suddenly turned sharp. Because what? Chun Fu Bai's single eye widened. He had given up on everything for 40,000 years. Even if Bai Lai was at the perfected soul transformation realm, he was willing to fight to the death. If he failed, he would die. Because the corner of Bai Lai's mouth curled up. All of a sudden, his aura dispersed. Light flickered on both sides of Bai Lai. The plain-clothed young man and the middle-aged cultivator appeared at the same time. Because I'm a tribulation god. Chapter 183. Divine Tribulation. Whoosh! The entire 5 Wheels Mountain was in an uproar. Bai Lai was actually a deity tribulation cultivator. Chi refinement, foundation establishment, core formation, nascent soul, soul transformation, deity tribulation, undying. These are the 7 great realms of cultivators. The higher one went, the greater the gap between the realms. The difference between soul dissolving and divine tribulation was a qualitative change. A divine tribulation realm cultivator was something that only appeared once in tens of thousands of years on the White Bone continent. Legend has it that the inheritor of Xian Su is a deity tribulation. However, its whereabouts were elusive, and it was really just a legend. It was rumored that the immortal temple in the White Bone southern region had a divine tribulation ancestor, but no one seemed to have seen him before. To the cultivators of the White Bone continent, a deity tribulation was a myth. That was an unreachable or even an unattainable existence. On the ancestral spirit peak, Chun Fu Bai, crippled Longzi, Nie Xiang, and Yu Ji's expressions changed when they heard Bai Lai's words and saw the existence of the Holy Trinity. Feng Shi. Yu Ji's beautiful eyes were filled with affection. She looked at the plain-clothed youth. That was the junior brother Feng in her heart. Master. Blind spiritual sense fell on the white-robed, middle-aged cultivator. Because in his eyes, that was his master. 3 souls in one breath was a divine ability of the great perfection of the soul transformation realm. A deity tribulation cultivator would naturally be able to use it. At that moment, Chun Fu Bai looked at the 3 cultivators before him with an ashen face. That was because he couldn't tell which one was Feng Shi's real body. It seemed that all of them were Feng Shi's real body, and their realms were all higher than his. Could it be the three divine tribulations? Which was the real body and which was the doppelganger? Chen Fubai could not tell at all, because it was also his first time seeing a deity tribulation cultivator. Back then, Sheng Luan was only at the peak late stage of the soul transformation realm. Invincible divine tribulation. This was the only understanding that the cultivators of the Five-Wheel sect and the White Bone sect had about the divine tribulation. Chen Fubai could feel a tremendous pressure bearing down on him. The plain-clothed youngster, the white-robed cultivator, and Bai Lai stood facing Chen Fubai in a triangular formation. At that moment, the aura emanating from their bodies made it difficult for Chen Fubai to advance. He felt that there were three mountains in front of him, three insurmountable mountains. At that moment, Chen Fubai lost all hope. It was impossible for him to defeat Five Wheels. The so-called recovery of the Five Wheels was simply a fool's dream. Nothing could be more devastating than this. Because the belief that a person had persisted in for 40,000 years had collapsed in an instant. Chen Fubai was half human and half ghost. It could be said that he was living an ignoble existence. It was to defeat Five Wheels. However, the appearance of Feng Shi, the fifth disciple of the Holy Wheel, shattered everything. Hee. Chen Fubai suddenly sneered and looked at Feng Shi's three clones with endless sorrow in his eyes. The Selectan sect is indeed inferior to the Five-Wheel sect. I, Chen Fubai, have let down the ancestors of Whitebone. With that, Chen Fubai raised his skeletal hand. In an instant, his 5 fingers turned into claws, and he actually grabbed at the side of his body. His immortal heart was still on the side of his physical body. Destroying one's immortal heart, destroying one's Tao and soul. Chen Fubai had chosen to commit suicide. This change was out of everyone's expectations. Chen Fubai was determined to die, because the meaning of his life was no longer there. However, in front of the strongest, sometimes you don't even have the right to choose. Even if you want to die. Feng Shi's middle-aged clone moved slightly. Almost no one saw how he appeared in front of Chen Fubai, but everyone saw this scene in the end. The middle-aged Feng Shi pointed with one hand. Chen Fubai's skeletal arm was frozen in the void. At this moment, Bai Lai's body and the plain-clothed young man's body gradually disappeared in the void. The paper fan was already in the middle-aged cultivator's hand. Feng Shi looked at Chen Fubai with a faint smile and said, Chen Fubai, death is easy, but living is difficult. If you die, what will happen to the disciples who broke into Five Wheels? Do you want me to kill them all? To remove the Selectan sect from the White Bone mainland? At this moment, Chen Fubai was frozen in the void by Feng Shi, but he could still speak. Winner takes all. Do as you wish. He. Feng Shi fanned himself and shook his head with a bitter smile. Chen Fubai, you've perfected the soul transformation realm, but you still have such a temperament? What a waste of the Holy Wheel ancestral master's painstaking efforts. What? Chen Fubai narrowed his single eye. The Holy Wheel ancestral master had painstaking efforts? All I know is that the Holy Wheel ancestral master's hands are stained with the blood of his fellow disciples. Hearing that, Feng Shi sneered. Chen Fubai, you used to be the little junior brother of the Holy Wheel ancestral master. You should know what kind of person he is. Then, Feng Shi pointed a finger at the center of Chen Fubai's eyebrows. A beam of white light poured into him. It was a divine sense. Chen Fubai was slightly stunned. It was the Holy Wheel ancestral master's voice echoing. The voice was a little hoarse, as if he didn't have long to live and his aura was weak. Don't ask about the past. Don't ask about the future of the Five Wheels. I have no regrets in my life when I kill for all living beings. What crime have I committed after 100,000 years of peace? My 5 disciples must leave the Five Wheels. If the soul transformation realm comes out, they can be killed. Every 30,000 years, no one will return. Those who meet Fubai are willing to be ghosts under the knife. Chen Fubai's expression changed slightly, but he didn't say anything. That's the Holy Wheel ancestral behest. Although we don't fully understand its true meaning, you should at least understand it. Feng Shi said to Chen Fubai. I have no regrets in my life when I kill for all living beings. What crime have I committed after 100,000 years of peace? I don't understand the specific meaning of these two sentences either, but I think the Holy Will Ancestral Master must have had his reasons. Fengshi frowned slightly. Fengshi was good at divination and even had a supernatural ability. However, he didn't understand why the Holy Wheel Ancestral Master wanted the white bones to be stained with blood. Why did he want peace for all living beings? Chen Fubai didn't say anything. However, his mind was already shaken. The 5 wheels originated from the white bones. The Holy Will Ancestral Master had already explained this before he died, and he also told us to pay with blood. You're right. The root of the 5 wheels is the white bones. Fengshi emphasized the last 8 words. The root of the 5 wheels was the white bones. Hearing that, the entire 5 wheels was in an uproar again. Everyone, including the blind ancestral master, was shocked. It seemed that what the Selectan sect said was true. Ha ha ha, ha ha ha. Chen Fubai couldn't help but laugh. However, his laughter was full of sorrow and vicissitudes. He was about to cry. However, he had no tears left. After 40,000 years, he finally heard what he wanted to hear from one of the ancestral masters of the 5 wheels. Thank you. Chen Fubai smiled and bowed to Fengshi solemnly. Our sects share the same roots. Why bother torturing each other? Fengshi heaved another long sigh. 40,000 years ago, the white bones was bathed in blood. 40,000 years later, the 5 wheels will be slaughtered. Every sip and every peck was predetermined. From now on, our sects don't owe each other anything. Daoist Chun, today's battle ends here. Do you have any objections? Fengshi called Chen Fubai Daoist Chun. After all, a soul transformation realm cultivator should call a deity tribulation cultivator senior. Huh? Chen Fubai was taken aback. Obviously, he didn't expect Fengshi to say that. He nodded at first, then shook his head. Daoist Chun, what else do you want? Fengshi asked. I only want one thing. Chen Fubai looked at Fengshi. What is it? Fengshi asked. Chen Fubai bent his knees and knelt in front of Fengshi in the air. All the cultivators were taken aback. By the divine tribulation. Chen Fubai said solemnly, Senior, you said that the root of the 5 wheels is the white bones. Our sects share the same roots. Why bother torturing each other? This junior understands deeply. Chapter 184. Fubai's bow shook the 2 meridians. Even mortals in the secular world had their own dignity and pride, let alone a great perfection of the soul transformation realm who had lived for more than 40,000 years. At that moment, the entire 5 Wheels mountain range was silent. Chen Fubai knelt in the void. The half-human white, ghost's withered hair was flying wildly. In this life, he was willing to live and die for bones. Why would he hesitate to kneel? He didn't have much lifespan left. Since Fengshi didn't want to kill again, Chen Fubai was willing to do the last thing for Whitebone. The 2 sects shared the same root. However, they had suffered disastrous losses in this battle. Even though the soul transformation ancestor was still there, he was lacking in strength and suffered countless casualties. Uniting the 2 sects was the most rational choice. That way, they would be able to dominate the Northern Bone region and even the Central region. With White Bones as his name, he worshipped soul transformation as his venerable self. This was a proposal that both sides could accept. In fact, Fengshi was the one who had the final say in this matter, because he was a divine tribulation. In this world, the strong were revered. The might of the divine tribulation was enough to suppress everything. None of the 2 sects dared to disobey. In fact, Fengshi was thinking the same thing as Chen Fubai. However, different tasks required different people to handle. Otherwise, Fengshi could have let Chen Fubai commit suicide just now. Although Fengshi was a god tribulation, he still had 3 senior brothers and senior sisters. Fengshi looked at crippled Longzi. Qin Longzi nodded and sighed. If that's the case, it's considered perfect. Fengshi looked at Niexiang. Niexiang shook his head and smiled bitterly. I, Niexiang, have been pursuing the god's tribulation all my life. Only now do I know the power of the god's tribulation. If it was 10,000 years ago, Niesiong, would definitely be unwilling. Haha. But now, I'm a person with less than 100 days of lifespan. What kind of trouble can I stir up? Fengshi then looked at Yuji. Yuji was flirtatious and charming, but when Fengshi looked at her, her cheeks flushed. That was definitely not a seduction technique, but a bashfulness born from love. Fengshi had always made her heart race. Junior brother Feng, whatever you say, it is. That was a very feminine reply. Fengshi smiled. Such a result was, of course, the best. Thus, he helped Chen Fubai up with both hands. Fellow cultivator Chun, as you wish. Whoosh! At that moment, the entire Five Wheels Mountain was in an uproar again. Because this result was too sudden. One must know that not every cultivator had the layout and realm of the soul transformation realm. Not every disciple knew what the sacred wheel ancestral behest was. Whether it was the Five Wheels or the Slekton sect, many cultivators still needed some time to accept this matter. Of course, no one was willing to die. No more killing. It would always be the will of the people and the path of good. Therefore, there would always be many problems, but they could all be understood and forgiven. Fellow Taoist blind, fellow Taoist azure-robed, the two nascent soul patriarchs bowed to each other. Chief Yang, sect leader Bai Zongchen and Yang Tianxiao sheathed their swords and smiled faintly. Things in the world were often like this. Love and hate, gratitude and resentment, ambition and ambition. They might be remembered for thousands of years, but they could also vanish in an instant. At this moment, Yang Tianxiao turned to look at Yin Zhongmo, and Yin Zhongmo looked back at him at the same time. The two of them could understand each other the best. Open strife and veiled strife for hundreds of years. He racked his brains for every possible scheme. But so what? Bai Lai was a deity tribulation. In his eyes, everything must be fragile, childish, and laughable. What could escape Bai Lai's eyes in the Five Wheels' 10,000 years of history? Bai Lai only saw through it, but did not say it out loud. Because sometimes, God was unwilling to interfere in the fighting of mortals. Once God descended to the human world, everything would exist according to God's will. Because he was God. Brother Yang, after surviving a calamity, would you like to have a drink? Yin Zhongmo smiled. Ha! Chief Yin, of course we have to keep our word. Let's drink and play chess. We won't leave until we're drunk. Yang Tianxiao laughed. Everything in the past was erased. The Five Wheels of White Bones, the war had ended, and their hearts had returned to their roots. This was a blessing. However, at this moment, an earth-shattering sound came from the direction of Windwheel Mountain. Everyone was taken aback. Just as one wave subsided, another wave arose. Boom! Boom! The green fog above the Windwheel Mountain suddenly dispersed. The wind swept away the clouds, and the world returned. In fact, everything had happened almost at the same time since the nascent soul realm battle on the ancestral spirit peak. Everything happened in an extremely short period of time. Mu Jinghong had already started to change not long after entering the Azure Mist Array. However, no one could see what was going on inside because of the fog. Then, the fog dissipated. A tall and slender woman was actually standing outside the Windwheel Mountain. She had red hair and a red dress, like a demon. Under her feet, there was a red fog like a blood tide. A wave of mysterious aura spread out. It was filled with bloodthirst and demonic intent. Mu Jinghong. At that moment, everyone's expression changed. No one had seen Mu Jinghong like that. Ha ha ha. GGG. Mu Jinghong suddenly laughed. Her red hair flew in the wind, and her blood energy surged. Who said that? Eternal life? Who lied to us? Eternal life. Who said that? Eternal life? Who lied to us? Eternal life. Mu Jinghong had already gone mad. However, there was endless sorrow and sorrow in her laughter. No one knew how many lives and how many reincarnations she had gone through to experience her pain and suffering. Ashes to ashes, dust to dust, emptiness to emptiness, nothingness to nothingness. 10,000 years of admiring the mortal world, one lifetime of white bones. Ha ha ha, sob, ha ha. Her laughter was like crying, the sorrow of the ages. At that moment, Mu Jinghong was like a ghost, but it seemed that everyone was infected. A glint of pain flashed in Feng Shi's eyes. Mu Jinghong's performance had exceeded his expectations. Feng Shi knew the pain of a person with a soul. And Mu Jinghong wasn't just a person with a soul. Guan Xiong frowned in the sky. Mu Jinghong, who exactly are you? How can your pain reach the sky? The laughter echoed and shook the entire Five Paths immortal realm. At that moment, even the two grand cultivators of the Bone Mainland and the southern region couldn't help but look in the direction of the Five Paths immortal realm. The Bone Mainland. No one could say for sure if that space belonged to the White Bone continent or not. A girl in a white outfit was sitting on a purple lotus platform. Her brows were slightly furrowed, but there was a sly look in her eyes. Could it be that little fatty messed things up? Hee hee, Master will definitely skin him alive. But whose laughter is that? Why is it so sad? It's a person with a soul. The southernmost part of the Bone Mainland. There was an old temple and a meditation room. A young monk was sitting on a tattered praying mat. The monk's expression was indifferent, but his eyes reflected everything in the Five Paths immortal realm. Amipa. The young monk didn't open his mouth, but he was chanting in his heart. The immortal temple was filled with Buddhism. The mundane past was just an old dream. He had already distanced himself from the mundane world and didn't care about anything. Five Paths immortal realm, Windwheel Mountain. Mu Jinghong floated in the air like a demon. The ninth peak of the Windwheel Mountain inside the cosmic cave. Sumo was sitting with her legs crossed. That was the position she had been in ever since she was brought in by the green mist array. Sumo felt a bit relaxed. Chapter 185. Laughing and scolding, loving and hating. Mu Jinghong's behavior outside the Windwheel Mountain affected Sumo's soul. However, Sumo felt that she had no choice. He was in the array. Boom! Rumble! It was an earth-shattering sound. The Windwheel 9 peaks were actually moving. It was truly moving. The entire mountain was moving. The entire Windwheel Mountain was moving, except for the Windwheel 9th peak. The Windwheel 9th peak was the center of the other 8 peaks. With the 9th peak as the center, it had a radius of 700 kilometers. The other 8 peaks had returned to a circular orbit. This was what Sumo had discovered when she first entered the Windwheel Mountain. The arrangement of the peaks was very strange. There was a hidden array, which meant it was a grand array. Whoosh, boom, boom. At this moment, every peak of the Windwheel Mountain was rotating on its own. Each peak had an earth-shattering aura. That aura was very special, because it was not an aura that should exist in the White Bone Mainland. The 9 peaks were all rotating on their own. A spectacle that had not been seen for thousands of years appeared in the Five Paths immortal domain. The entire Windwheel Mountain seemed to have changed into another world. It was incompatible with the entire Five Paths immortal domain. Moving mountains and moving seas was definitely an earth-shattering feat. The Windwheel Mountain was a world of its own. The soul transformation realm experts, standing in the void of the Five Paths, could not help but be shocked. They could also move mountains and seas, but the nature was different. Yang Tianxiao and Inzhomo were even more dumbfounded. Windwheel 9 rotations. Was that the legendary Windwheel 9 rotations? What was the Windwheel lineage doing? The battle in the Five Paths and White Bone Mainland had stopped. Did the Windwheel lineage still want to overturn the universe? At this moment, in the entire void, only Feng Shi knew what the Windwheel lineage was doing. However, Feng Shi did not move. If the deity Tribulation did not move, no one dared to move. Windwheel 9 rotations. Guan Xiong sighed in the void. So, the Windwheel lineage is not made up of soulless people? Where do they come from? Then, Guan Xiong looked at the entire Five Paths immortal domain and White Bone immortal domain. At this moment, perhaps it was because of the Windwheel earthquake. The feeling of ups and downs, which had already calmed down, came again. In the Slekton sect, apart from the White Eye Peak and the White Eye Peak, the White Nose Peak was also giving off a strange aura. The Slekton sect was in a state of panic. Guan Xiong flipped his hand, revealing 7 black and white chess pieces in his hand. Guanxiong looked at the chess pieces in his hand and smiled helplessly. This was the most powerful magical treasure he had. The Lord told me that everything is like a game of chess. It all depends on who is playing. Looks like I'll have to use these chess pieces today. Guanxiong seemed very reluctant. Looking again, the 9 peaks of the wind will really spun 9 times. Then, the 9 peaks simultaneously emitted an endless green radiance. 9 figures gradually appeared at the top of the 9 peaks. Each of the 9 disciples of Windmill occupied a peak. They sat cross-legged on their respective peaks. He sat down on a ball of green energy that looked like a praying mat. On the 9 peaks, only Sumo was looking around blankly, because when he was originally in his cave abode, he was suddenly enveloped by a layer of green smoke and floated to the top of the 9th summit. Sumo did not know anything and looked around. On the first summit, eldest senior brother was dressed in plain clothes and looked like an old farmer. On the second summit, second senior brother Du Shusheng was dressed in a snow-white robe. A folding fan was floating in front of him. On the third peak, the third senior brother, Hua Kei, was dressed in black, as usual. On the fourth summit, there was only a sole figure. It was a thin figure with a long sword on his back. The sword tassel was swaying, but the cultivator's face could not be seen clearly. Fourth senior brother? Sumo was startled. Fourth senior brother Windmill was just a soul? No wonder she had never seen him before. Fourth senior Windmill, the soul of a nascent soul. At that moment, everyone in the 5 wheels was shocked. Fourth senior Windmill was a nascent soul cultivator? Moreover, he existed in the form of a living soul. Who said that fourth senior Windmill was dead? Fourth senior brother was the secret of Windmill. On the 5th peak, fifth senior brother Suyaik. 3 ancient coins formed a triangular shape in front of him, emitting an ancient light. On the 6th peak, sixth senior brother Lu Tianzhan. His interspatial pouch was gone. On the 7th peak, 7th senior sister by Yifeng was dressed in a dreamy blue dress. However, at that moment, Bai Yifeng was not as ugly as she was now. On the 7th peak, a peerless beauty sat with her legs crossed. Her beauty was out of this world. So that was 7th senior sister's original appearance. On the 8th peak, 8th senior brother Han Tian looked like a giant, even though he was sitting with his legs crossed. At that moment, the 8 disciples of Windmill had their eyes closed. Their hands were all forming strange hand seals. Each of them was emitting a strange glow. What were they doing? 2nd senior brother, 7th senior sister. Sumo wanted to shout, but she could not make a sound. Eldest senior brother, 5th senior brother. Sumo wanted to struggle, but it was useless. At the same time, Sumo also saw Mu Jinghong. Is that senior sister Mu? Sumo was extremely shocked. Her red dress was like a demon, and she was as strange as a demon. At that moment, Mu Jinghong's head was lowered as if she was crying. The blood under her feet was surging like a surging cloud. However, Mu Jinghong actually had a hint of calmness and calmness. It seemed like the power of the Windmill 9 rotations had temporarily suppressed Mu Jinghong's rage. Also, Mu Jinghong seemed to have passed through the illusion. However, she could not completely calm herself down. Senior sister Mu. However, Sumo was like a bird trapped in a cage, unable to escape. At that moment, all the disciples of Windmill slowly opened their eyes. Everyone looked at Su Mo with warm smiles on their faces. Little junior brother. 2nd senior brother's voice could be heard. Little junior brother. 7th senior sister's voice could be heard. Little junior brother. 5th senior brother's voice could be heard. At that moment, everyone in Windmill called him little junior brother, including 4th senior brother, who only had a soul left. Senior brothers and sisters. Sumo shouted. At that moment, the Windmill disciples seemed to have heard Sumo's voice too. Little junior brother, don't be impatient, 7th senior sister said gently. You have entered the Windmill sect, so you are a Windmill person. Today, we are going to give you an opportunity. 7th senior sister? Sumo did not understand. 7th senior sister looked at Sumo as if she was looking at a child and did not speak. Little junior brother, we have to remember this lifetime of fate. Second senior brother said with a smile. Windmill, for tens of thousands of years, we have been waiting for you or someone like you to appear. Waiting for me? Sumo did not understand second senior brother's words at all. Little junior brother, thank you for the foundation-breaking pill. Although I don't need it, sixth senior brother Lu Tianzhan said with a smile. He did not look like the wretched person he used to be. Little junior brother, I will remember you. Eighth senior brother Han Tian was actually about to cry. He would not say anything else. Little junior brother, do you still remember what I said? Fifth senior brother Su Yike said with a smile. I once said that all our abilities will belong to you in the future. Sumo remembered that sentence. It was when he had just entered the windmill sect. Little junior brother, do you still remember? Bai Yifeng had a kind smile on her beautiful face. Windmill is home. You must remember this sentence. We will wait for you at home. Remember the fate of this lifetime. Be grateful for the kindness of this lifetime. In this world, there will always be people who will leave us and go to another world. At that moment, we can only bear it. At that moment, Sumo was extremely flustered. His soul seemed to have been sucked out by something. Senior brother's seventh senior sister, Sumo, shouted loudly. However, no one responded to him. Chapter 186. Whoosh, Windwheel Empowerment. The 9 peaks of the windwheel spun at the same time. Dazzling lights shot up from each of the 8 peaks. The light came from the Baihui acupoint on the top of the 8 suns of the windwheel. The light wasn't any weaker than the soul transformation light just now. 8 soul transformation lights? That's impossible. However, it was indeed a light that shot into the sky with a trace of soul spirit. In fact, the native cultivators of the Bone Continent didn't have that kind of soul spirit. Those who had white bones were all soulless people. The windwheel empowerment. Guan Xiong's expression changed. Hardship cultivation, bloodline cultivation, empowerment, and awakening were the 4 main paths of cultivation. Most cultivators focused on tempering their qi. Bloodline inheritance required special constitutions. In the past, second senior brother had also taught Su Mo about bloodline cultivation. However, second senior brother had deliberately concealed some of the essence for today. At that time, second senior brother said that there were 2 possibilities of bloodline cultivation. One was bloodline cultivation, which required one to have a bloodline talent. Families were born with a certain skill that could only be activated at a specific time. The other was bloodline cultivation, which was passed down from generation to generation. For every person who inherited it, one person would die. This kind of bloodline cultivation could almost completely inherit the inheritor's ability. In fact, the first was true bloodline cultivation. The so-called second type of bloodline cultivation was actually empowerment. However, Guan Xiong knew the empowerment method. It was an absolute method that was even better than bloodline cultivation to a certain extent. However, the conditions for empowerment were extremely strict. If one wasn't careful, both the inheritor and the inheritor would be destroyed. The Windwheel lineage actually wanted to carry out the empowerment for Su Mo. This scene caused Guan Xiong to be extremely shocked. Meanwhile, Feng Shi had a complicated expression as he watched. The Windwheel shouldn't belong to the 5 wheels. They were finally going home. Whoosh, whoosh, the entire Windwheel mountain shook, and a strong wind rose. 8 beams of light shot into the sky and gathered in one spot, covering the sky and earth. That spot was the peak of the Windwheel 9th peak. At that moment, everyone who witnessed the empowerment couldn't help but be shocked. Sumo looked up. She felt that there was a blue world hanging above her head. There seemed to be 8 shining stars in that world. At that moment, Sumo had a very bad feeling. His 8 senior brothers and sisters seemed to be leaving him. The other cultivators looked on in astonishment. The Enlightenment Technique. It was a technique that many low-level cultivators had never even heard of. That was truly the moment to witness a miracle. The light shot up into the sky and then fell straight down. Of course, their target was Sumo. Bang! At this moment, Sumo felt that the green world was covering the sky. In front of Sumo's eyes, there was a misty green light. Then, the 8 stars fell straight down. Sumo slowly closed her eyes. Boom, boom. Every star was a legacy. They poured down from Sumo's Baihui acupoint. That inheritance actually contained many techniques. Then, there was an endless amount of spiritual qi, among which there was an extremely special aura. Hu, Hua. A star fell, and a huge wave rose in Sumo's Dansi. The white skeleton that was originally sitting down was instantly plated with a layer of green light. The waves rolled, and the Dansi expanded. At that moment, Sumo's Dansi expanded at an exponential rate. Qi of core formation surged like a tornado, filling the sky. Sumo's cultivation level rose rapidly. Because it was enlightenment, all the power of the Windwheel lineage would become Sumo's power and fuse into his body. As for what cultivation level the Windwheel lineage was at, no one could say for sure. It was the mystery of the 5 wheels. The second star fell, and the white skeleton was plated with a layer of blue light. At that moment, the original appearance of the skeleton immortal root could not be seen, because it was completely covered by the blue light. On the 9 Dragons immortal platform, there was a blue humanoid sitting cross-legged. Boom! Hua! The third star, the 4th star, the stars fell straight down, as if falling into the sea. Each star was an inheritance. At that moment, countless spells had been fused into Sumo's sea of consciousness. They were the essence of the Windwheel lineage. Those spells flowed into her sea of consciousness. In the eyes of others, Sumo was sitting cross-legged on the 9th peak of the Windwheel mountain, his long hair flying in the wind. Above his head, there were 8 layers of green energy that kept pouring into him. The green aura around Sumo's body revolved in waves. He seemed to be receiving a special kind of baptism. Hu Hua. Fengshi moved. The 3 clones formed a triangular formation and stood outside the Windwheel lineage. The qi of the divine tribulation dispersed slightly. He was actually protecting the Windwheel with his Dharma blessing. Mu Jinghong, who was standing opposite the 9th peak, was watching everything that was happening in front of him in a daze. Her eyes seemed a bit empty and complicated. Her red dress and red hair did not fade. However, the red tide under her feet subsided slightly. At that moment, no one knew if Mu Jinghong had completely understood or if he was still immersed in the illusion. Everyone present was astonished by this sudden change. However, no one dared to interrupt him. They only waited in silence. In the immortal temple in the southern region of Bones, the young monk sighed lightly when he saw this scene, and then he slowly closed his eyes. There were too many secrets on the Bones. Since he wanted to put an end to everything, he didn't mind watching the blessing. In an ethereal place in the middle region of Bones, the girl in white seemed to be deep in thought. The Windwheel blessing? She should go back and tell her master about this, because she seemed to have seen a ray of reincarnation light in this spectacle. Thinking of that, the purple lotus platform under the girl in white suddenly emitted light. The girl in white disappeared in the ethereal place. The Windwheel mountain, there was only one ray of blue light left above Sumo's head. On the other 8 peaks, the Windwheel 8 suns were still sitting cross-legged. From the outside, they didn't seem to have changed at all. However, the blue light above their heads was no longer emitting. Many spells had appeared in Sumo's mind. Sumo's core C had become boundless. The everlasting art had been activated to the extreme, but it seemed to be unable to completely dissolve the power brought by the blessing. On the 9 Dragons deity platform, the white skeleton gradually revealed its original appearance. However, the entire deity base of the white skeleton was emitting a faint blue light. Not only that, the 9 Dragons deity platform was also covered in a layer of blue light. They were all injected with a new aura. Boom! Hua! In Sumo's world, the last star fell. Then, Sumo felt a ray of light above her head. It seemed to be a white hole, but she didn't know where it led to. Sumo felt her cultivation level soar. The energy of the core formation became the energy of the nascent soul, and the energy of the nascent soul became the energy of the soul transformation. Core formation, nascent soul, soul transformation. It was as if she had skipped a level. Sumo's aura instantly shook the heavens. This caused everyone present to be stunned, especially the nascent soul grand cultivators and the soul transformation ancestral master. From core formation to soul transformation. What did that mean? Whoosh. Chapter 187. The aura of soul dissolving suddenly shot into the sky. However, there was an even more strange aura on the ninth peak of the Windwheel Mountain, because after all the green light poured into the top of Sumo's head, a bright white hole had appeared in the void. The sound of wind suddenly echoed throughout the entire Windwheel Mountain range. It seemed to be the sound of wind from ancient times. Whoosh, 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 whoosh. The wind howled, but only the sound could be heard, not the shape. Although Sumo had opened her eyes, she couldn't move her body for the time being. For Sumo, the empowerment seemed to have yet to be completed. However, when all the azure light disappeared, the Windwheel 8 opened their eyes again. However, there was a green glow in their eyes, and they no longer had the color of the past. Soul Shell. Guanxiong frowned slightly in the air. Meanwhile, Fengshi's 3 clones looked at the peaks of the Windwheel Mountain range and suddenly sang a sorrowful song. The wind swirls around the 5 wheels, majestic and mighty. Wine, laughter, cursing, madness, only I have a soul. In the Bone Sect, the sky collapsed and the earth caved in. Every 10,000 years, the Windwheel 9 rotations overturn the universe. This was the crazy divination song left behind by the Windwheel sect. Fengshi's song was full of heroism and desolation. He had written the song, so he knew the meaning of the song better than anyone else. That's right. The wind swirls around the 5 wheels, majestic and mighty. The Windwheel is above the 5 wheels. Madness, only I have a soul. Everyone in the Windwheel sect had a soul. The crazy divination song had already explained everything. Whoosh, the Windwheel 8 suddenly flew up. They were all singing the crazy divination song. They were sending him off. At that moment, heaven and earth echoed in unison. However, when the crazy divination song started, Mu Jinghong, who was in front of the 9th peak, slowly raised her head. The Windwheel is supreme? Only I have a soul? Ha! The Windwheel is nothing. Mu Jinghong was quiet for a long time. It was hard to tell if she was consciously waiting for the Windwheel empowerment to end. Now, the Windwheel empowerment was complete. Murderous intent appeared on Mu Jinghong's face again. The blood tide beneath her feet began to surge again. The expressions of the cultivators from the 5 wheels and White Bones sects changed. The aura emitted by Mu Jinghong was simply too terrifying. Outside the Windwheel Mountain, Bai Lai, the plain-clothed young man, and the middle-aged cultivator were all frowning. Fengshi was also worried that his deduction was wrong. Mu Jinghong was currently the biggest variable, because no one could control her. Woohoo walala. The sound of the wind on Windwheel Mountain grew louder and louder. Mu Jinghong's red clothes and blood-red hair fluttered in the wind. Windwheel faction, don't even think about living. Mu Jinghong's voice was cold as he formed a seal in the air. Looking again, 17 black shadows suddenly appeared within the Windwheel Mountain. They were precisely the 17 ink soul death warriors that had disappeared all this while. No one knew why they had disappeared just now. But at this moment, they had all turned into black shadows. They were Mu Jinghong's swords and guardians. Soul kill. Mu Jinghong formed a seal with his hands. The 17 black shadows turned into 17 rays of soul light and went straight for the Windwheel 8 Suns. At the same time, the Windwheel 8 Suns also flew up from their respective peaks and rushed toward Mu Jinghong. However, the Windwheel 8 Suns did not say a word. They had only sung the crazy divination song just now. There was only Qing Hui in their eyes, nothing else. They seemed to have turned into puppets. However, Sumo could not see any of this. Senior brother, senior sister, Sumo shouted. He knew that Mu Jinghong would not show mercy. Mu Jinghong's purpose in coming to the Windwheel 8 Suns was to kill them. He had seen Mu Jinghong's extreme side before. At this moment, Sumo had no idea that the battle between the 5 wheels and White Bones had already ended. Only the Windwheel 8 Suns were not calm. However, The Wind Wheel Eight Suns would not listen to his call, and Mu Jinghong would certainly not listen to Sumo. Chi, chi, chi. The 17 rays of soul light could not stop the Wind Wheel Eight Suns. Miraculously, the Wind Wheel Eight Suns passed through all the soul lights and went straight for Mu Jinghong. Each of them held a ray of green light that looked like an immortal sword. They attacked Mu Jinghong from 8 different directions. Fast, accurate, and ruthless. No one knew the cultivation level of the Wind Wheel multiple figures because it was impossible to see them. Could they kill Mu Jinghong? However, that was the last thing the 8 brothers of the Windmill sect could do for Sumo. Mu Jinghong seemed to have expected this, just as the 8 sons of Feng Luan were about to reach her. The corners of Mu Jinghong's mouth actually curled up into a smile, and then he said in a light voice, "Thank you, everyone. I know you've already gone home." Within the Windwheel Mountain, only Mu Jinghong and the 8 sons of Windwheel could hear this. Of course, Sumo couldn't hear him. The people outside the Windwheel Mountain could not hear it either. Only Feng Shi and the other 2 sighed slightly, because Feng Shi had made the right bet. In fact, Mu Jinghong had not lost his last shred of rationality. She knew what she was doing. However, everyone saw Mu Jinghong flick his sleeves like a demon. The blood tide under her feet rose abruptly as she cast the spell. 1,000 layers, and the waves were 10,000 feet high. A strange black talisman appeared between Mu Jinghong's eyebrows again. Red dust. Destroy. Mu Jinghong yelled and swept up the endless red dust again. This was the same move she had used to kill the 7 Earth Wheel Realm Core Formation cultivators. Boundless red dust, undefeatable in the world. Whoosh, rustle. The red sand swept across the entire Windwheel Mountain range like a curtain. It was an indiscriminate attack. However, none of the red sand swept toward the 9th peak, nor did it fly more than 700 miles away from the Windwheel Mountain. Wherever the red sand passed, no life was spared. Not even a blade of grass or a tree. That scene was the nightmare of all cultivators. Even Feng Shi couldn't help but frown. What kind of spell was that? The faces of Chun Fubai, crippled Longzi, Nie Xiang, and Yu Ji, the 4 soul transformation realm grand cultivators, twitched. That was because the entire 8 peaks of the Windwheel Mountain had been razed to the ground. Wherever the red sand passed, everything died. It could be said that other than the 9th peak of the Windwheel Mountain, which Sumo was guarding, Mu Jinghong had made the entire Windwheel Mountain range disappear without a trace. Of course, the 8 wind wheels had already melted into the red sand. Ha ha ha, GGG. Mu Jinghong laughed at the red sand, her red hair flying wildly as if she had gone crazy again. At this moment, no one dared to make a sound. Silence. Not only was there fear, but there was also endless shock. At that moment, apart from Mu Jinghong's laughter, the entire 5 Wheels Mountain was dead silent. That was because that scene was too bloody and terrifying. Everyone wondered if Mu Jinghong could raise the entire 5 Wheels Immortal Realm, or even the Bone Mainland if she wanted to. That was because the attack power of the red sand was definitely not limited to 700 miles. They surrounded the Windwheel Mountain like a ball of wind, and Mu Jinghong had been controlling them. She only wanted to destroy the Windwheel Mountain. Otherwise, she could have made the red sand scatter. Silence. Red sand. Everyone felt the call of death. Mu Jinghong was a red devil. However, all of a sudden, a loud shout broke the silence. Mu Jinghong, I'm going to kill you. Chapter 188. The red robe was dreamy, the green robe illusory. When Sumo stood up from a 9th peak of Windmill, everyone in 5 Wheels Mountain saw the confrontation between red dust and green mang. Now, only the 9th peak was left within a 700-li radius of Windmill. It was a kind of loneliness and a kind of tragedy. Sumo was dressed in green robes, great perfection of soul transformation. At this time, his aura was completely different from Sumo. Green light was like immortal chi, his eyes filled with divine light. There was wind in the air, and his robe fluttered. That was a soul transformation almighty. But Sumo looked at Mu Jinghong, his eyes full of sorrow. But more than that, there was coldness and determination. Mu Jinghong. Sumo enunciated each word. Why must you do this? Sumo's heart was bleeding. Why did Mu Jinghong have to destroy Windmill? And he was merciless. Haha. Sumo, why must you do this? Mu Jinghong smiled coldly at Sumo. Isn't Windmill the most important to you? Now that I've killed them, what can you do? Ha ha ha. Your seventh senior sister is as beautiful as a flower. Ha! Mu Jinghong's eyes glowed with red light, looking very demonic. I will destroy everything you like, everything you love. Mu Jinghong smiled wickedly. I am a white bone darkseed and a white bone witch. Are you satisfied with this answer? I, Sumo, have never harmed anyone. Sumo's tone was cold and sorrowful. I, Sumo, have been grateful. I did not want to kill, but if I did not kill, someone would kill me. What wrong did Windmill do? You must destroy my bloodline. Why did our past friendship fade? Sumo's voice trembled slightly, but he grabbed at the air with one hand. ZZZT, ZZT. Green lightning appeared in the air. That broken bamboo pole was already in Sumo's hand. At this time, the bamboo pole glowed brightly, the green light dazzling. That was definitely a divine weapon. What did Windmill do wrong? Mu Jinghong couldn't help but laugh coldly. There's no right or wrong in this world, as long as it didn't go against his conscience. If I want it, I will go. When I, Mu Jinghong, do things I don't care about right and wrong. Love comes and goes. Why ask about the past? If you don't ask about right and wrong, why ask about the past? Sumo smiled sadly. His hand that was holding the bamboo pole trembled as he pointed it at Mu Jinghong. It was a process of becoming firm again. Sumo's heart was gradually turning cold. Kill! Sumo roared fiercely. He gave himself one last stab of pain and courage. The bamboo pole was like a dragon, and the body was like an arrow. The two merged into one and charged straight at Mu Jinghong. The power of soul dissolving suddenly spread out. Hu! Chi-chi! Sumo was like a long sword that could split the sky. A path of blood was cut open in the vast expanse of red sand. The red sand dispersed like a curtain, seemingly ineffective against Sumo. The scene shocked all the cultivators. Feng Shi and the other two bodies frowned. After all, they might not be able to break through the strange red sand. Guan Xiong froze in the air as well. Sumo could break through the invincible red sand. Mu Jinghong was probably the only one who smiled bitterly. Her red sand was indeed ineffective against Sumo. Only she knew why. However, her eyes suddenly turned cold. Boom! The red sand was ineffective, but Mu Jinghong still had a shocking technique. He raised his arms and instantly formed a circle. Sumo flew over, but she was suddenly blocked 300 feet away from Mu Jinghong. Mu Jinghong formed a hand seal, and a red shield that was dozens of feet tall appeared in the air. Boom bang! The broken bamboo pole directly pierced the blood shield. Red light spilled and green light scattered. There was a loud noise. However, Sumo couldn't go any further. Mu Jinghong's lips curled up. However, Sumo wasn't the old Sumo anymore. He had thousands of Dao techniques in his mind. Although he hadn't completely merged them, he was different from before. Break! Sumo quickly formed a hand seal. The broken bamboo pole suddenly emitted a green light that was like an umbrella spreading outwards. Boom! It was like a battle between two opposing factions. Sumo's immortal art was endless. Waves surged in the Pill Sea. Buzz, buzz, buzz. The bamboo pole kept vibrating and emitting dragon roars. Boom! Crack! Sumo suddenly straightened the pole. Mu Jinghong's shield was broken by Sumo. Mu Jinghong's eyes flashed with surprise. Whoosh, whoosh. At the same time, Sumo thought of something. A clone appeared on each side of her body. They went around the shield and went toward Mu Jinghong. They were two identical Sumo clones. Oh, Mu Jinghong seemed to have forgotten that Sumo had reached great perfection soul transformation realm and could form 3 souls at once. However, how could the 2 souls break through Mu Jinghong's defense? Mu Jinghong didn't take them seriously at all. Whoosh! The red sand rolled up. Bang! Bang! The two souls were hidden by Mu Jinghong's red sand. That was because they weren't their true bodies. However, they turned into light and returned to their true bodies. It seemed that Sumo's two souls were completely different from Fengshi's clones. Sumo raised an eyebrow and activated her soul transformation power again. Golden light shone from Sumo's body as if she was possessed by a golden dragon. At the same time, a golden light dragon floated above Sumo's head. The golden light dragon bared its fangs and claws and roared at the sky. Boom! Sumo waved an arm. A golden dragon charged toward Mu Jinghong in the air. Sacred Ancestor Golden Dragon Fist. Many almighties of the five wheels recognized this secret technique. However, they hadn't seen the sacred wheel Golden Dragon Fist from a soul transformation almighty in a long time. At that moment, Sumo seemed to be possessed by the sacred wheel ancestral master. It was a technique from 8th senior brother Han Tian. The golden dragon roared and danced in the sky with unstoppable momentum. Mu Jinghong narrowed his eyes. That technique came from Han Tian, but Sumo's sacred wheel Golden Dragon Fist was not comparable to Han Tian's fist. Sumo's fist was not at its peak, but it was enough to kill a soul transformation realm cultivator. Sumo not bad, Mu Jinghong thought. Since you've seen my demon-like appearance, let me be your whetstone for the last time. Whoosh, whoosh, a blood tide surged under Mu Jinghong's feet. The blood tide was different from the red sand. Mu Jinghong waved one hand. A blood tide surged and turned into a giant dragon that met Sumo's golden dragon. Boom, crack, bang. If Fengshi hadn't been controlling the Windwheel Mountain, the soul transformation chi would have leaked. Within 350 kilometers of Windwheel Mountain, the golden red light scattered like thousands of shooting stars. This time, the two were evenly matched. Mu Jinghong looked at Sumo and sneered. Sumo, your sacred ancestor, Golden Dragon, Fist can't hurt me at all. What other techniques do you have? Just use them, because I won't show mercy anymore. If you don't ask about the past, why show mercy? Sumo sneered. Good. Then, Mu Jinghong formed a seal with his hands, and his sleeves fluttered. Blood soul transformation. Mu Jinghong yelled. Looking again, the meteors from the blood tide had actually started to gather together. Whoosh, whoosh, one by one, blood-red figures appeared in the void. One streak, two streaks, three streaks, there were 17 of them in total. That was the number of inky soul death warriors that Mu Jinghong had. At this time, 17 blood souls in red stood in the air. Every red-clothed blood soul emitted a bloody aura. Sumo stood in the air and watched everything coldly. He had techniques in his mind, but they were not enough to fight against Mu Jinghong. Sumo looked at Mu Jinghong for the last time, and the sadness in her eyes gradually faded. Since she had cut off the kindness, why should she show mercy? Sumo wanted to take revenge for the Windwheel clan. Chapter 189. Swish. As soon as the ancient mortal fan appeared, it set off a black light, but Sumo didn't open it right away. At the same time, Sumo thought of something. He patted his storage pouch, and the ragged bag was tossed into the air. Whoosh, within the ragged bag opened. Whoosh, whoosh, the 17 white skeletons inside flew out. In an instant, the entire Windwheel Mountain area was filled with a terrible and ominous aura. The sky changed color, and the wind and clouds surged. Sumo had underestimated the power of the skeletons. It was the aura of Silent Death Valley. In an instant, the red sand converged and quickly retreated. The 17 blood souls in red shivered and were about to scatter. Outside Windwheel Mountain, Fengshi's 3 clones changed their expressions. Bai Lai's face was pale, and the plain-clothed young man looked shocked. The middle-aged cultivator made a hand seal. Whoosh! The 3 soul clones merged into one again. Otherwise, Fengshi wouldn't have been able to resist the terrible and ominous aura. After the 3 souls merged into one, Fengshi's face darkened. Gods came to bury, and immortals returned to silence. It was a power that even divine tribulations couldn't resist. Silent death, immortal bones. Guan Xiong was surprised again. Guan Xiong had been surprised by many things in today's battle. Although he hadn't been to Silent Death Valley before, he knew some of the legends there. At the same time, he sensed the power of the same origin. Sumo could control the power of Silent Death Valley. One skeleton, one immortal suppresses the heavens. Guan Xiong murmured to himself. It was a phrase he had heard from his master. Silent Death Valley was also a forbidden area for Guan Xiong. But what was going on with Sumo? Could he have entered Silent Death Valley? That was unbelievable. Besides, not only had Sumo gone in, but he had also brought out the skeletons inside. Sumo didn't expect that just summoning those skeletons together would have such a huge impact. It was beyond his expectations. In fact, he should have known that Silent Death Valley was a place where divine tribulation stopped. How could the skeletons there be ordinary in the outside world? The moment those skeletons appeared, Sumo's aura instantly suppressed Mu Jinghong. However, at this moment, he couldn't care less. Skeleton technique. Sumo made a hand seal. Ka, ka. Among the 17 skeletons, the first 8 moved slightly. For Sumo, this was already a huge improvement. However, Sumo was still unable to control them freely. Naturally, there was no time for him to ponder and train hard. Mu Jinghong looked at Sumo and the skeletons without moving. Sumo, very good. Mu Jinghong thought to himself. At the same time, she raised her right hand again. That mystical black long sword slowly emerged from his sleeve again. At the same time, Mu Jinghong slapped his storage pouch. A phoenix cry rang out. The black feather god Hong also rushed into the sky. However, at that moment, its entire body glowed red like a phoenix. That divine bird was actually wailing endlessly. The blood tide beneath Mu Jinghong's feet started to recede. However, her red dress was redder, and her red hair was longer. Within the black longsword, there was a trace of red light. Red and black, strange and resplendent. Swoosh! At this moment, Sumo shook the red dust ancient fan. The ancient fan opened. Whoosh! The white skeleton that Sumo could control suddenly flew out. Its 5 fingers formed a claw and went straight for Mu Jinghong. That move was very similar to Chun Fubai's skeleton claw. A ray of white light went straight for Mu Jinghong. However, the red-dressed Mu Jinghong did not dodge and went straight for the white skeleton. At that moment, it was like a decisive battle. The red-dressed and the white skeleton went for each other. However, just as the white skeleton was 3 feet away from Mu Jinghong, the corner of Mu Jinghong's mouth curved. This was because the black mark between her brows suddenly lit up. No soul, no path. How dare you hurt me? The mark between her brows and the 8 words were like a curse. Crack! The white skeleton instantly stood still in the air, not daring to move forward. At that moment, Sumo was stunned. At the same time, the pendant on her ancient fan suddenly lit up. The 2 ancient words red dust glowed brightly. At that moment, the others did not have much of a reaction. However, Guan Xiong, who was in the void, almost fell from the void. The heart of white bone. Guan Xiong had wandered on the white bones for it. Why was it on Sumo? If Guan Xiong was not worried about the entire white bone continent waking up, he would probably have rushed straight for the clouds. In an instant, a finger snap, Mu Jinghong also saw the red light. Red dust. At that moment, Mu Jinghong smiled like a flower. Ashes to ashes, dust to dust, nothingness to nothingness, nothingness to nothingness. 10,000 years of admiring the red dust, a lifetime of white bones. Everything was the best arrangement. Mu Jinghong came from the red dust, and then returned to the red dust. His lifetime of white bones was not in vain. Sumo, give me your life. Mu Jinghong's aura suddenly soared into the sky after he froze the white bones. The bright red light shone again, and a black light appeared. Mu Jinghong wielded the black sword and swooped down from the sky. The crane screeched, and the god wailed. However, the red glowing black feather Shanhong simply hovered in the air, because it had received Mu Jinghong's order. That was Mu Jinghong's most stunning sword strike. The red robe was like clouds, and the black light was like ink. It was a moment of thick ink and color. At that moment, Mu Jinghong's sword went straight for Sumo's head. That sword strike was enough to kill Sumo. Not to mention Sumo, she could even kill a deity tribulation. Sumo, on the other hand, instinctively opened his ancient fan and fanned it fiercely. Whoosh, a red wind blew, and Mu Jinghong's red sand reappeared. At that moment, within the red light, Mu Jinghong's beautiful face was filled with endless murderous intent, but her eyes were filled with endless tenderness. It was an extremely contradictory state. At that moment, Sumo did not notice anything about Mu Jinghong. Go! With a thought, the broken bamboo pole soared into the sky. In the red wind, the green light shot up. In the red wind, the black light fell. Boom! The broken bamboo pole and the black sword collided. Boom! The two divine weapons collided, stirring up layers of ripples that spread out like waves. Mu Jinghong's red robe fluttered, and Sumo's green robe fluttered. The two stood in the void, one above and one below, staring at each other. However, one held the black sword, and the other held the bamboo pole. The look in their eyes was very special. Love and hate, warmth and coldness. Everything was clear to them. However, at this juncture of reincarnation, they could only face it with death. The Wheel of Time, on the Five Wheels mountain range, different cultivators could see them fight to the death from different angles. They did not know if this scene could be recreated. Sumo, my love, please forget about my demon-like appearance. Suddenly, Mu Jinghong, who had a murderous aura and was as cold as ice, smiled sweetly and spoke in a soft voice. Sumo was stunned, and at the same time, her heart ached. Chi, Pooh. However, Sumo did not have time to react. Then, a shocking scene occurred. The water-like black sword in Mu Jinghong's hand suddenly turned into smoke and dissipated. However, Mu Jinghong's body rapidly fell. Chapter 190. Pooh, blood splashed everywhere, and the beauty fell. It was a scene that Sumo would never forget for the rest of her life. The broken bamboo pole had pierced through Mu Jinghong's immortal heart. Mu Jinghong had finally succeeded. Wow! The entire Five Paths immortal realm was in an uproar. The stunning Mu Jinghong of 3,000 years. She used to be the chosen one of the Five Wheels. The stunning Mu Jinghong of 3,000 years. She used to be the direct disciple of the Selectin sect's ancestral master. However, black dress was heartless, while red dress was bloodthirsty. The mystery of Mu Jinghong had never been solved. Her actions were full of contradictions. However, she had died in such a way. No one had expected this. Many people wanted to close their eyes at that moment, because they didn't want such a stunningly talented woman to perish. Guan Xiong raised his eyebrows. He didn't understand what Mu Jinghong wanted. He didn't know where Mu Jinghong had come from. Feng Shi heaved a long sigh. He had predicted Mu Jinghong's choice, but he wasn't happy at all. That was because he could only predict one part. He couldn't see the whole picture. And in that single instant of billions and billions of years, Sumo's heart was empty, blank, and stupefied. Something seemed to have been sucked out of his soul. He had killed Mu Jinghong with his own hands. In fact, even Sumo didn't know if he wanted to kill Mu Jinghong or not. Whoosh! Mu Jinghong's body was pierced by the bamboo pole and fell toward Sumo. Sumo caught Mu Jinghong's body out of instinct. Although Mu Jinghong was still alive, his immortal heart had been shattered, and no one could save him. Senior Sister Mu. Senior Sister Mu, Sumo's body was shaking. Meanwhile, Mu Jinghong's red clothes and hair faded away, and he slowly turned back into the appearance he had when he first met Sumo. The demonic energy was gone. Black dress or red dress? Which one was the real Mu Jinghong? Senior Sister Mu. Why? Why? Mu Jinghong's black clothes were stained with blood. At that moment, tears rolled down Sumo's cheeks. Did he hate Mu Jinghong? Of course he hated her. This was because he had personally witnessed Mu Jinghong massacre the disciples of the Five Wheels. He had personally witnessed Mu Jinghong kill the 8 wheels of windmill. He had personally heard Mu Jinghong's words of slaughter. Did he love Jinghong? Of course I do. If life was like the first time they met, Sumo hoped that Mu Jinghong would still be that cold and aloof immortal outside the Silent Death Valley. If time could be reversed, Sumo hoped that Mu Jinghong would still be that shy girl on the fleeting cliff. In fact, if she could come back to life, Sumo was willing to freeze time at the moment of confrontation. It was Mu Jinghong who brought Sumo to 5 wheels. It was Mu Jinghong who risked his life for Sumo. It could be said that without Mu Jinghong, there would be no Sumo. However, what was the purpose of all of this? Why'd he end up like this? Sumo still didn't understand. Mu Jinghong was really forcing him to kill her. Sumo, at this moment, Mu Jinghong raised his hand and smiled gently. He gently caressed Sumo's face and wiped away her tears. Actually, Mu Jinghong didn't have a choice. Because only if I die in your hands will you remember who I am. Mu Jinghong's eyes were filled with tears. Sumo, I want to go home. I want to return to that sea of stars. I want to return to the planet that belongs to us. I want to sit under the plum blossom tree with you. Senior Sister Mu. Sumo didn't understand what Mu Jinghong was saying, even though he was listening very hard. Mu Jinghong smiled sadly. You've forgotten everything, but it doesn't matter. I will let you remember. If 1 lifetime isn't enough, then 2 lifetimes. If 2 lifetimes aren't enough, then 3 lifetimes. If 3 lifetimes aren't enough, then 10 lifetimes. If 10 lifetimes aren't enough, then 100 lifetimes, 1,000 lifetimes. Mu Jinghong's tears flowed down his cheeks. Then I'll give you, Senior Sister Mu. At this moment, Sumo didn't want anything. He only hoped that Mu Jinghong wouldn't die. It's very obedient. I'll take everything else with me. Mu Jinghong smiled. At this moment, her lower body actually started to dissipate. It was an extremely unique way of dying. It was the dissipation of a soul. Everyone with a soul would die like that. No, Senior Sister Mu. Sumo panicked. However, Mu Jinghong was still smiling, even though there were tears in his eyes. Sumo, 3 lifetimes is 1. I will wait for you in reincarnation. You will meet me again. Whoosh! A gust of wind blew away the person in Sumo's arms. Everything about Mu Jinghong finally dissipated. The black feather god let out a long cry that pierced through the clouds. Sumo also raised his head and roared, but his arms were empty. Suddenly, a voice echoed in Sumo's mind, caressing the long sword, singing in the snow. Endless ages passing by in a flash. Let heaven and earth grow old, a beauty and white hair. Who can know me? The mortal world is boundless. Who isn't immortal? Who is a demon? The 3 realms are empty. Beyond the blue sky, don't ask what karma is on the wheel. Smiling at the 3,000 paths, I tell you, unwilling to be a passerby. What song was that? What song was that? Ah, Sumo's blood surged, her dantian chaotic. She held her head with both hands, her head aching. Instantly, she felt the world spin. Starlight flew into her mind. 1 starlight, 1 love, 1 starlight, 1 hatred. However, the scattered starlight could not form a boundless sea of stars. They were only meteors that cut through the dark sky, bringing a moment of light. However, Sumo still could not see the boundless darkness. Plum blossoms. Plum blossoms. In a trance, Sumo saw plum blossoms filling the sky. Scattered into mud and dust, only the fragrance remained. What about Mu Jinghong? His body was gone. Where was his soul? However, a bloody light erased all of Sumo's illusions. Sumo's head hurt so much she could not control it. In the void, Su-Imo rolled and howled incessantly. The pain came from her soul. Roar, roar. In the void, the white skeleton Sumo summoned resonated with it. Roar, roar. But suddenly the entire 5 paths immortal realm let out an indescribable roar. The entire earth was heaving. Heavy breathing filled everyone's ears. What was going on? All the cultivators' expressions changed, because everyone felt the earth shaking. Something seemed to be coming out from under the immortal realm. Boom! Crack! In the direction of the Slekton sect, peaks collapsed, the sky cracked, and the earth caved in. 7 beams of light rose from the white forehead, white eyes, white ears, white nose, and white mouth. Ah, roar! The 7 peaks collapsed, rocks flew everywhere. The 7 beams of light could be seen from the 5 paths immortal wheel. At that moment, the young monks of the immortal temple all stood up. However, in the end, he still chose not to go, because if it did not work, he could still make a move here. Wah! Chun Fubai spat out a mouthful of blood. It was because a white skeleton flew out from his bosom, directly heading north. Its target was the White Bone Hunter Convergence Peak. White Bone Transformation. Chun Fubai and Feng, she shouted almost at the same time. 40,000 years ago, Chun Fubai had heard of a distant legend. The White Bone Continent was formed by a white skeleton from beyond the heavens, and that skeleton did not really die. Instead, it had fallen into a deep sleep. Feng Shi knew that the legend was true. Right now, if someone looked down at the White Bone Continent, they would see the white skeleton's head was slightly raised. Its upper body was also moving. Feng Shi looked up at the clouds. Descendant of the Immortal Void Sect, what are you waiting for? Almost at the same time, Guanxiong had already made his move, because he could already see the entire skeleton turning over and raising its head. That was absolutely impossible. Seal. Guanxiong waved one hand. There were 7 chess pieces in his hand. 2 were black and 5 were white. They went straight for the Selectan sect. The 7 chess pieces were facing 1 peak each, sealing the 7 orifices of the skeleton. Suppress. At the same time, Guanxiong formed hand seals in the sky, and Feng Shi formed hand seals on the 5 paths immortal wheel. The 2 divine tribulations formed hand seals at the same time. Guanxiong fell from the sky. The power of the divine tribulation shook the entire northern region of the White Bone Continent. Rumble, rumble, the 2 of them pressed on the 5 paths immortal wheel at the same time. Ah, roar whoosh! The earth shook and countless mountains in the 5 paths mountain range cracked and collapsed. Almost all the disciples of the 2 sects were knocked away by the powerful Dharma seals. Except for a few soul transformation cultivators, even nascent soul cultivators had to retreat. Guanxiong and Feng Shi were like 2 gods. Boom, whoosh, roar. The endless power of the divine tribulation swept up a gust of wind and sent rocks flying. Their energies spread in the sky. Boom, crack. The mountains collapsed as if doomsday had come. The 5 paths mountain gate had already collapsed. Many cultivators could only protect themselves. Guanxiong and Feng Shi activated the seal with all their strength. Runes spread quickly like a spider web with the 2 of them as the center. The power of the divine tribulation seeped into the earth. Boom, boom, after a long time. Everything went back to normal after the sound died down. The earth finally stopped shaking. Sumo, his red dust fan, the bamboo pole, and the ragged bag all landed on the ground. All the skeletons disappeared because they had been taken back by the ragged bag. Sumo fainted on the ground. His long hair was like grass, and his face was pale. Black Feather Shunhong stopped next to him. Guanxiong and Feng Shi both let out a sigh of relief. Their backs were already soaked. Luckily, the skeleton was just about to wake up. If it weren't for the 7 chess pieces that sealed the skeleton's 7 orifices, a divine tribulation cultivator couldn't control everything. They survived a disaster. However, the 5 paths mountain range was no longer the 5 paths mountain range and the White Bones mountain range. The landscape of the entire northern region of the White Bones mountain range had changed a lot. The distance between the 5 paths mountain range and the White Bones mountain range was less than 30,000 miles. The mountains and mountains have been reorganized. The 7 chess pieces turned into giant black and white mountains and suppressed the mountains of the White Bones mountain range. The divine tribulation suppressing the White Bones mountain range. From then on, the energy of a soul transformation cultivator would never disturb the northern region of the White Bones mountain range. Soul transformation cultivators could cultivate here and didn't have to go far. As long as there was no divine tribulation battle, the seal wouldn't be activated. The battle was finally over. 9 days later, Sumo woke up, but he didn't say a word all day. Old dreams of the past, passing clouds, and smoke. Sumo seemed to have changed into a different person. Later, Sumo left the Five Paths mountain range and the Selectan sect. Only a few people in the sect knew where Sumo went. They only knew that Sumo met Zhao Yunqing before she left and gave him a lot of elixirs. He had also visited a few apprentice cultivators at the same time, including Xiao Chia and Chun Dong. Then, Sumo and Bai Lai got drunk. During that time, Sumo pointed at Bai Lai's nose and yelled, "Bai Lai, you lied to me." That night, Sumo cried. Bai Lai sighed. Later, Sumo knelt for 3 days and 3 nights in the 9th peak of the Windwheel mountain range. In the end, he left with Guan Xiong. 100 years later, the Five Paths mountain range and the White Bones mountain range had completely merged and was no longer called the White Bones mountain range. The battle back then had changed a lot. In the end, the divine tribulation suppressed the White Bones mountain range. So the Five Paths mountain range and the White Bones mountain range were renamed the Divine Tribulation sect. Chapter 191. White Bone Continent, Southwest Region. The southernmost part was originally a barren land with a radius of 10,000 kilometers. It could be said to be an extremely dangerous place. Legend had it that this was the last place the entire White Bone Continent had appeared. Only after thousands of transformations did its true form appear. Tens of thousands of years ago, this place had never been peaceful. Ferocious beasts roamed about, demons roamed about, and the place was desolate and uninhabited. However, one day, a ray of Buddhist light descended from the heavens and entered the earth. 10,000 years later, a temple was built here, and it was named Wanhuang. From then on, the White Bone Continent's southwest region was bathed in Buddhist light. It was peaceful, and more people were living there. 10,000 Desolate Temple, also known as Immortal Temple, because there were only 300 disciples in the Wanhuang Temple. However, those 300 disciples didn't age even after 10,000 years. Their youth was eternal, and they always looked young. One of the 3 great sacred grounds of the White Bone Continent, Thousand Desolation Temple, mysterious and unknown. It was the most transcendent being at the southern end of the Bone Continent. However, it was rumored that even ordinary commoners had the opportunity to pay respects to Buddha at the Wanhuang Temple. However, what one could see would depend on one's fate. 3,000 miles away from the 10,000 Desolation Temple, there was a small mortal town. The town was neither too big nor too small, with about 100 or so households. The streets were perfectly straight, and the bamboo buildings were neat and tidy. There were some grocery stores on the street, and there were people coming in and out from time to time, but there was not much noise. The Bluestone Road was clean and spacious. Everything was tranquil, quiet, and peaceful. In the center of the town, there was a small square paved with bluestone. Many ancient trees were planted all around the square. They were tall and straight, with luxuriant foliage. There were stone benches and tables under the tree. On the stone table, there was a 19-way chessboard. In the center of the square, there was a lotus sculpture. That lotus was slender and elegant, but it was still budding. It was as white as jade, vivid and lifelike. It was as if a cool breeze was blowing, and in the next moment, it would unhurriedly open. The entire square gave off the feeling of a small town. It was tranquil, peaceful, and even somewhat otherworldly. At this time, it was in the afternoon, so very few people came. Under the ancient tree, only a few townspeople were enjoying the cool air and chatting. Judging from the way they dressed and talked, the people in this town lived a rich life, not poor at all. On the square, a few children who were playing were the only ones who were slightly noisy. Under an ancient tree, 2 people were playing chess. Black and white clashed, their movements filled with killing intent. However, the expressions of the 2 players were completely different. The one holding the white ghost stone was a fatty. His body was like a ball, and his eyes were slightly narrowed. It was almost impossible to see his eyes, which were completely slits. However, he was still smiling. Although the fatty looked a bit despicable, his chess skills were more profound. In this situation, White had the upper hand. Everything on the chessboard was under his control. The person holding the black chess piece was a man in green. He looked to be in his early 20s, but his eyes were reserved. At this moment, he was holding a black chess piece in one hand, his eyebrows slightly furrowed. On the board, the white pieces had already occupied 2 corners, while the black pieces only had 1 corner in hand. In the other corner, in the central region, the white pieces were closing in step by step, and the black pieces were also in imminent danger. In this round, Blackie could lose at any time, because Blackie was heavily surrounded and practically had nowhere to go. The few paths he could take were all within Fatty's expectations. Hee Sumo, you have nowhere to go. You only have a chance of survival if you play here. However, if I take your position, your 7 pieces will be in my pocket. Let's go. Guan Xiong was pointing and talking, quite pleased with himself. He had been immersed in this path for hundreds of years and was quite knowledgeable. Sumo, on the other hand, had only been practicing for 10 or 20 years. Although she improved rapidly, she was originally Guan Xiong's disciple. So how could she be his opponent? However, Sumo laughed coldly. He did not play according to Guan Xiong's plan. Instead, he placed the black chess piece in his hand at the lower left corner. Stab. Guan Xiong looked and couldn't help but be angry. Sumo, you're messing around. With this stab, even if you can win this corner, the central region will be empty, and you'll lose a large piece of fertile land. With this move, you'll lose everything, and there's almost no chance to turn things around. Guan Xiong was extremely angry, as if he was reprimanding a disobedient student. He was extremely angry. Sumo sneered, then with a wave of his hand, he directly gave up. Guan Xiong, I know there's no chance to turn things around, and I'll definitely die. But I want to play like this. How about it? Why? Guan Xiong asked. Because I want to. Sumo maintained his cold smile. Sumo, only want to play my own chess. Life and death is not within the scope of my consideration. Sumo looked at Guan Xiong and said, just now in the chess game, I had already entered your dead end. If it's about life and death, I can only play according to your plan, but the result is still death. Since that's the case, why should I play according to your plan? That would only increase your satisfaction and pleasure. I'll play my own chess. I have my own fun. Sumo looked at Guan Xiong and ridiculed. Damn Fatty, seeing your flustered and exasperated look is so funny. Although I lost, I'm still very happy. Ha. Sumo couldn't help but laugh. Guan Xiong was so angry that his face turned red, but his eyes were filled with helplessness. Guan Xiong, Sumo, will not be anyone's chess piece. Finished laughing. The corner of Sumo's mouth curved coldly. Then he stood up, clasped his hands behind his back, and looked at the children playing in the distance. At that moment, a trace of warmth appeared in his eyes. Guan Xiong shook his head, sighing deeply. After the 5 wheels of White Bone's battle, Sumo's temperament had changed greatly. Cold, deep, and self-centered. Because of the death of Windmill, because he personally killed Mu Jinghong, because Bai Lai lied to him too much, because Sumo believed that not a single one of them could have happened. What White Bone's grudge? What Holy Wheel's teachings? What life and death? In Sumo's eyes, 5 wheels and Select and Sect cooperated to put on a farce and a scam. Since the gods' tribulation appeared, it could suppress everything. Then why bother? Sumo's thinking was simple and extreme. But this was the way of the world. Simple and effective might not be desirable at that time. Many complications were involved. It was as if the end of life was actually death. Then, was there no need to live anymore? All the experiences and processes were the paintbrush for love and hate, happiness, anger, sorrow, and joy. If there were no twists and turns, how could it be exciting? Although Sumo did not understand the choices made by Bai Lai and Guan Xiong, and even the choice made by the Windmill faction, they were not wrong. At the same time, Sumo was not wrong. Actually, he did not want the Windmill empowerment. He could give up his soul transformation realm cultivation. He still hoped that the Windmill faction was still there, and that Mu Jinghong was still the cold but occasionally shy senior sister. But if that was the case, time would stand still. Sumo thought about these problems for nearly 100 years before he gradually got over it. No one was wrong, but Sumo was no longer the Sumo of the past. He wanted to completely walk his own path. Just as he said, he would not be anyone's chess piece. After the 5 wheels of war, he woke up from the endless darkness. Then, many strange sounds and images appeared in his mind. That song, that plum blossom, and that fragmented sea of stars. Sumo was definitely not a simple sumo. So, he wanted to advance to the gods' tribulation. He wanted to leave the white bone continent. He wanted to start searching for his true self. Chapter 192. The leaves rustled in the gentle breeze. Guanxiong could only sigh at Sumo's words. He understood Sumo's feelings. Anyone would have a drastic change in personality after experiencing such a change. Although he had a near-invincible cultivation base on the Bone mainland, Sumo had also lost a lot of warmth and happiness. Gain and loss, light and heavy. People would never be able to explain it clearly. Perhaps this was the pain of life. After leaving 5 wheels, Guanxiong spent most of his time traveling around the Bone mainland with Sumo. To Sumo, he had seen a lot of things. The Bone mainland central region had the east and west profound valleys. Those 2 first-class immortal sects were even more powerful than 5 wheels and Select and Sect. The southern region of the Bone mainland had existences like Bliss Palace. Inside Bliss Palace, there were soul transformation cultivators. Along the way, Sumo had indeed broadened his horizons, but his realm had remained at great perfection of soul transformation. In the beginning, Sumo was almost unwilling to talk to Guanxiong. He could stay in one place for more than 10 years. Later, Sumo's situation improved slightly. However, Sumo could never return to his former self. Cold and deep. Guanxiong was like a servant when he was with Sumo. Guanxiong was probably the most powerful servant in the entire White Bone continent, because he was the heir of the immortal Void Realm, a deity tribulation body. However, in Sumo's eyes, Guanxiong was Guanxiong, a damn fatty. The so-called realm seemed to be floating clouds in Sumo's eyes. It was like the night before 5 wheels left, when Sumo pointed at his nose and scolded by lie. What by lie? What deity tribulation? What deity tribulation? Sumo was scolding you. You stinking beggar. You King lied to me. Why did you want me to enter Windwheel? Why didn't you stop it from happening? That night, Sumo was bossy and arrogant, drinking and cursing. At that time, Guanxiong was also present. The 4 soul transformation cultivators looked at each other and were speechless. At that time, Guanxiong thought to himself, Sumo, you're really the best on the Bone continent. A soul transformation realm cultivator dared to scold the god Tribulation. In the past 100 years, Sumo had also scolded Guanxiong. However, no matter what Sumo said, Guanxiong was not really angry. This was because Guanxiong was originally a slave, and he had cultivated a body of excellent qi cultivation. Guanxiong would sometimes glare angrily, but in fact, it was to cooperate with Sumo. Moreover, Guanxiong had received the mission of accompanying Sumo in secret. He had found the heart of White Bone. It was with Sumo. The pendant on the red dust fan was the heart of White Bone. His new mission was to protect Sumo. Of course, in recent years, Sumo's temperament had improved slightly. He seemed to be thinking more clearly about many things. He basically stopped scolding Guanxiong. Guanxiong understood that Sumo was acting like this because he valued friendship too much. At this time, Sumo stood with his hands behind his back, looking seriously at the few mortal children. Guanxiong stood behind him, not saying a word, because he knew that many times Sumo understood many things in this state, from mortal to immortal. However, many things still needed to be understood from a mortal world. There were a total of 5 children, 2 boys and 3 girls, all about 8 or 9 years old. They were noisy, as if they were going to put on a play together. However, there was some controversy when they were dividing the roles. I don't want to play a fox spirit. One of the slightly younger girls pouted. My mother said that fox spirits are not good things. What fox spirit? Nonsense. That's a fox immortal, a beautiful female fox immortal. Another slightly older girl said. I don't care. Anyway, I don't want to play. The little girl said angrily, foxes are not good. I want to play the Holy Maiden, and then Big Brother will come and save me. Hee hee. The slightly older girl rolled her eyes at the little girl and said unhappily, the Holy Maiden will die in the end. You want to play it too? So what if I die? Anyway, it's all fake. Can't the Holy Maiden be married by the love monk? It's good to be a bride. Shameless. Humph. The slightly older girl said. Then I'll play the fox immortal. Another girl next to her said with a smile, actually, it's all the same. Let Xiao Yu play the Holy Maiden, and Yao Yao, you play my righteous heroine. Okay then. The three girls finally reached an agreement. There was no dispute between the two boys. One was a devil, and the other was a love monk. Sumo watched with interest. He felt that these children were very interesting. What kind of play was this? Sumo watched, and so did Guanxiang. The world of children was always full of imagination. They could even create an entire world through their imagination. Thus, their performance began. In fact, there was almost nothing on the small square. However, a tree was a mountain, a stone table was a palace. A tree branch was an immortal sword. A blue stone was a magic treasure. They even pointed at Sumo and Guanxiang and said, they are the demon's minions. Sumo smiled, and Guanxiang laughed. The story that the children acted out was very simple. The Holy Maiden and the Love Monk were a pair of lovers. However, the fox immortal liked the Love Monk. On the wedding day of the Holy Maiden and the Love Monk, the fox immortal begged the devil to secretly capture the Holy Maiden, and she herself became the Holy Maiden and married the Love Monk. Later, the matter was exposed. The Love Monk sought revenge on the devil. In the end, a heroine helped the Love Monk to kill the devil. However, the Holy Maiden died to save the Love Monk, and the fox immortal fled because of shame. In the end, the Love Monk lost all hope and became a monk. From then on, the Love Monk felt compassion for the world, cultivated the great Tao, and finally obtained the name Love Monk. Before that, no one knew his name. In fact, the story was very simple, but it did not seem simple at the same time. Because of the final battle, the small square was filled with branches and bluestones. It was very intense. When the Holy Maiden died, the Love Monk was in so much pain that he wanted to commit suicide. Those children were very talented in acting, and it seemed like they were always acting out that scene. After reading it, Sumo smiled and let out a long sigh. After reading it, Guanxiang muttered to himself, it seems that monks don't really want to be monks. Hee hee. That Love Monk is the founder of Wanhuang Temple, right? Sumo said to Guanxiang. Guanxiang smiled and shook his head. That meant that it was a child's game. How could it be taken seriously? Moreover, many folklore could not be taken seriously because it had long lost its authenticity after being interpreted by later generations. However, Sumo did not think much of it. He waved his hand and called the children over. Then, he flipped his hand and a few fruits appeared in his palm. Of course, Sumo's fruits were not ordinary. Unfortunately, only the girl who knew how to give and took one. Zixiang, Mother doesn't let us take other people's things. A boy said, he's not a bad person. Little Zixiang said with a smile and directly ate the fruit. It was really sweet and delicious. Delicious. The little girl smiled sweetly. Sumo sighed in her heart. This was a fortuitous encounter. Because of that fruit, this little girl would definitely be able to nurture immortal roots in the future and become an extraordinary cultivator. Unfortunately, the other children were not willing to eat it. Children, I want to ask, where is the Love Monk? Sumo asked with a smile. In the great temple in the south. The children said in unison, very far, very far. Chapter 193. That town was called White Lotus. Sumo and Guanxiang had been there for 3 or 4 days. In fact, this was just a very ordinary town within 10,000 miles of Wanhuang Temple. And there were many other towns like this around. White Lotus Town was one of the closest towns. However, in Wanhuang Temple's immortal territory, all the towns seemed to have a lotus statue. For Sumo and Guanxiong, 3,000 miles could be covered in a single step. However, they still walked out of the town step by step. These towns are not ordinary, Guanxiong said. Oh, huh? Sumo asked, what's so special about them? Can't you tell? You already know the answer, Guanxiong sneered. You're saying that the 3,000 Buddha lotus can suppress the bones? Sumo said, that's right. Guanxiong said, the southernmost point of the white bone continent is the foot of the bones. It's extremely difficult to control. Wanhuang Temple only has 300 monks. Even if they're all nascent souls, it's not easy. Therefore, they use the power of mortals to cultivate the lotus to suppress the bones. However, the lifespan of the mortals in the 3,000 towns will be halved. Planting the lotus on the bones is the best plan, Sumo sneered. If not for Wanhuang Temple, the southernmost point of the bones would be barren and filled with ferocious beasts. Now, even if their lifespan is reduced, they'll live a peaceful life without suffering or pain. This is better than Sheng Luan's so-called peace with killing. Haha, Guanxiong was noncommittal. Sheng Luan's actions in the past had not yet been determined. They could only speculate from the Sheng Luan's ancestral teachings. However, Sumo was already prejudiced after the 5 battles of bones. The two talked as they walked, and soon they were outside the town. Although the people in these towns were all mortals, they all had a special priest. This priest was usually an old man. On special days, the whole town would kowtow to the Buddha lotus under his leadership. Esteemed guests, are you leaving? Outside the town, the priest of White Lotus Town happened to bump into Su Mo and Guanxiong. He bowed and greeted them. They had met 3 days ago. It was the same priest who had arranged for them to stay in an inn. Sorry to disturb you for 3 days. We are indeed leaving. Sumo returned the courtesy. Esteemed guests, if you go to the temple to worship Buddha, please help us pray for White Lotus in front of the holy monk. The old priest said sincerely. Half a month later, it will be the grand assembly of the divine temple. At that time, there will be guests from all over. May the 2 esteemed guests form a sacred fate and see the light of Buddha. Thank you for your auspicious words. Don't worry, if we go to the temple, we won't forget your instructions, Sumo said. The old priest bowed again. Only then did Sumo and Guanxiong truly leave White Lotus Town and head south. The 2 of them did not use any divine abilities and continued to walk slowly. Over the past 100 years, they had spent a lot of time like this. That old priest was a cultivator. Guanxiong said, Sumo nodded. However, he is only at the 3rd stage of qi refining. Such a cultivator can only be said to be slightly better than mortals, right? Guanxiong nodded. Sumo, do you know why there's a cultivator here? Guanxiong asked, keeping her in suspense. This kind of situation always happened to Guanxiong. This was because Guanxiong was much more familiar with the White Bone Continent than Sumo. The successor of the immortal Void Realm, a deity tribulation expert, the White Bone Patrol Envoy. It could be said that besides Silent Death Valley, there was no place on the White Bone Continent that Guanxiong did not know or was unfamiliar with. He was a living map. Guanxiong had even stayed in many sects, just like when he was at the 5 Wheels. I don't know, Sumo answered calmly. Actually, under normal circumstances, most people would ask why. However, Sumo was not an ordinary person under normal circumstances. After living together for 100 years, Guanxiong naturally knew Sumo's personality. Thus, he smacked his lips, feeling a little bored. Guanxiong could only answer his own question. Why? Because they are all lamplighters. Lamplighters? Sumo's interest was piqued. What kind of lamplighters? The White Lotus lamp. Guanxiong said, the 3,000 white lotuses need to be lit by someone before they can display their power. The old priest's 3rd level of qi refinement didn't come from his own cultivation, but rather from the immortal temple's monks. Oh, Sumo was stunned. Then what do you mean by lighting a lamp? It means sacrificing one's life for the Tao. Guanxiong sneered. Compassion also comes with a price. The 3,000 lotuses need to be lit to suppress the demon. On Demon Suppression Day, when the lamps are lit, is their limit. Sumo furrowed his brows. However, as long as the white bones don't move, the priests will never die. Those priests can live forever. Undead? Sumo was stunned. Undead realm? Guan Xiong shook his head. Of course, not the undying realm. That is only a secret technique of the Immortal Temple. As for how it is done, I don't know either. You're going to the Immortal Temple this time to search for the secrets of the bloodline inheritance, right? Perhaps if fate wills it, you can ask around. Guan Xiong looked at Sumo with a smile. Guan Xiong, what is above the undying realm? Sumo suddenly asked. Hee. Guan Xiong shook his head again. Sumo, I told you before that when you reach that level, you will naturally understand. I can only say that the undying realm is only the highest level of the first stage of cultivation. Cultivation still has the second stage, the third stage, and so on. The path to immortality is long and boundless. The White Bone continent is only a small piece of white bone. The Pure Land world is extremely large. Moreover, beyond this world, there is another world. As long as your cultivation reaches a certain level, you will naturally understand everything. Between the worlds, is there really reincarnation? This was a question Sumo often asked Guan Xiong. There definitely is. Guan Xiong patiently replied. It was because he knew what this answer meant for Sumo. Sumo nodded. This was his motivation. It was because Guan Xiong told him that the Windwheel Masters only went to another time and space. When Mu Jinghong died, he told him, I will wait for you in the reincarnation. Didn't Seventh Senior Sister also say that she would wait for him to return? If there was reincarnation, then everything could be replayed. Sumo had this hope in his heart, which was why he kept on cultivating. There were too many mysteries in his heart, and he needed to continuously improve his cultivation to solve them. This time, he was going to the Immortal Temple because he wanted to investigate the problem of bloodline cultivation. At the same time, he wanted to ask a few other questions. It was because it was rumored that the Immortal Temple could solve the doubts of all living beings. Sumo was indeed puzzled. Guan Xiong had said that if Sumo had any doubts, he could ask him. However, Sumo didn't open his mouth. Bai Lai and Guan Xiong were both divine tribulation transcendents, but Sumo didn't want to ask them. Today, Sumo saw the children's play. As such, he wanted to see the legendary immortal master of the 10,000 Desolation Temple, a gathering of wind and clouds. He heard that in half a month, the Immortal Temple was going to hold a great assembly. The cultivators of the White Bone continent and many sects in the southern region should be attending. Sumo also wanted to use this opportunity to purify the Buddhist sound. Chapter 194. Wanwang Temple was also known as the Immortal Temple. Its location in the southern region of White Bones was similar to the Slekton Sect's Bai Hui Peak. There were few mountains in the southern region, but Wanwang Temple was still on a tall mountain. Wanwang Temple was halfway up the mountain. It was a group of temples that were neither too big nor too small, built against the mountain. There were 2 courtyards and many temples, but they only covered an area of 100 acres. The Divine Sun Dharma Assembly of Wanwang Temple was in 3 days. The Divine Sun Dharma Assembly was held once every 30 years. Many sects in the southern region of White Bones would usually send disciples to participate. At the same time, many itinerant cultivators came to watch the ceremony. There were even many mortals who traveled over mountains and rivers. Wanwang Temple's status in the southern region of White Bones was too high. The sects in the southern region of White Bones all wanted to show their respect. As for the itinerant cultivators and mortals, they wanted to answer questions. The Dharma Assembly had a total of 9 days. 3 of them were for the Taoists of Wanwang Temple to answer questions. There were mortals at the foot of Wanwang Temple's mountain. The mountain path was winding, but it was spacious. It wasn't crowded for 4 or 5 people to walk side by side. To show respect to Wanwang Temple, most cultivators who participated in the Dharma Assembly would walk up the mountain. Only nascent soul cultivators would walk up the mountain. Along the way, Su Mo and Guan Xiong seemed to have been infected by the dust of the mortal world. 60 years ago, Guan Xiong had participated in the Divine Sun Dharma Assembly and found it boring. At least, that was the case. At the moment, two outsiders, Sumo and Guan Xiong, were only mid-stage foundation establishment cultivators. This was Guan Xiong's technique. As long as one wasn't a deity tribulation cultivator, no one would be able to see through their cultivation. Guan Xiong used this secret technique to travel across the White Bone mainland. As they walked, they could see the temple gate in the distance. As long as they were a cultivator, it wouldn't take much effort to climb the mountain. However, the mortals were different. However, they were more sincere. There were even mortals who kowtowed every 3 steps and walked up the stairs. Sumo shook her head. Guan Xiong chuckled and said, "Sincerity works." The gate of Wanwang Temple wasn't majestic. It was even a little old. There were 2 greeting monks standing at the gate. They looked 17 or 18 years old. The 2 little monks put their palms together and looked peaceful. Every time they passed, they would smile and nod in greeting, whether they were cultivators or mortals. At this moment, the sound of a woman's laughter could be heard from behind the temple door. At this time, Sumo and Guan Xiong were only a few dozen feet away from the temple gate. They couldn't help but raise their heads to look. It turned out that there were a few women standing in front of the temple gate. They were all cultivators, all of them wearing gorgeous clothes, their appearances extremely beautiful, their spirits flying about. However, there was a hint of flirtatiousness between their brows. Among the 4 women, 3 of them were at the late stage of foundation establishment, and one of them was already at the peak of foundation establishment. This level of cultivation was definitely not low. A female cultivator from the Bliss Palace. Hee hee. Guan Xiong's small eyes narrowed into slits. Sumo, I'm afraid we're in luck this time. Hee hee. Sumo laughed coldly. Of course, he knew about the Bliss Palace. It was a first-rate immortal sect in the southern region of White Bones, and its status was similar to the 5 Wheels of Bones in the northern region of White Bones. However, the Bliss Palace had always had a bad reputation. The reason for the Bliss Palace's name was because it specialized in dual cultivation between men and women. Men and women were like cauldrons to each other, indulging in debauchery in search of bliss and enlightenment. The beauty of it was not to be known to outsiders. However, dual cultivation had always been looked down upon by orthodox cultivation sections. Evil and unorthodox sects were not orthodox. The Bliss Palace was almost synonymous with perversion in the world of cultivation. However, in the southern region of White Bones, the Bliss Palace thrived and stood tall for tens of thousands of years. Legend had it that the Bliss Palace had a soul transformation cultivator. Back in the day, Grandmaster Yuji of the 5 Wheels had some contact with the Bliss Palace. At this moment, the 4 female cultivators were teasing the 2 young monks. "Little monk, you're so handsome. Why don't you return to the palace with me? I'll make sure you enjoy all the bliss in the world. What do you think?" One of the yellow-clothed female cultivators smiled. "Thank you, benefactor. I'm just a guard here, and I'm not that lucky." After hearing the female cultivator's words, the young monk who was being teased was not at all annoyed. Instead, he smiled warmly. "Yo!" Another female cultivator in pink giggled. "What's wrong, little master? Do you think my sister isn't good enough for you? If so, you can choose whichever of us sisters is good enough for you." Hee hee hee. "That's right. Little monk, as long as you're willing, we sisters can do anything." Another female cultivator who was even more beautiful pursed her lips and giggled. "And you too, little master. You can do it too. As long as it's a monk from the Wanwang Temple, we sisters will be happy to serve you." Hee hee hee. The last female cultivator spoke as well. These 4 female cultivators had no qualms at all. They were like prostitutes from a brothel. The cultivators and mortals at the side could not help but frown. Even though the 4 women were as beautiful as flowers, they were filthy in the eyes of many. Guan Xiong, on the other hand, had a lecherous look on his face. His eyes kept roaming all over the 4 female cultivators. The Bliss Palace, hee hee. Guan Xiong rubbed his chin, looking like a pervert. You're still short of women. Su Mo ridiculed Guan Xiong. Didn't you say that you can summon and dismiss everything on the white bone at your beck and call? Hee hee. Guan Xiong rolled his eyes at Sumo. You don't understand. The female cultivators from the Bliss Palace are hard to come by. Hard to come by? Sumo smirked. Didn't you meet one today? Guan Xiong ignored Sumo and looked at the female cultivators. In truth, Guan Xiong was wondering why the Bliss Palace was participating in the Dharma assembly as well. Didn't they say that the Bliss Palace never participated in the Divine Sun Dharma assembly? He looked at the two little monks from the Wanhuang temple again. They looked the same as before. They were neither embarrassed nor angry. They merely smiled warmly and said, Ladies, it's true that I'm not blessed. Since you're here to pay your respects to Buddha, please enter the temple. Hey. The four female cultivators did not seem to want to give up. Among them, the female cultivator in pink raised her hand to touch the little monk's cheek. Little monk, let me have a taste. The other female cultivators wanted to make a move as well. They giggled incessantly. You're courting death, Sumo said in disdain. That was because she could tell that the two little monks were no ordinary people. Guan Xiong shook his head at the side. These female cultivators really didn't know what was good for them. How could they touch the monks of the Wanhuang temple so casually? The pink-clad female cultivator touched the little monk's cheek with her finger. However, she felt as if she had touched a hot iron brand in an instant. Her finger was scorching hot, and it hurt both her body and mind. Amaba. The little monk who was touched did not show the slightest bit of anger, nor did he look pleased. It was as if nothing had happened. Ladies, please enter the temple. Regardless of whether you're here to pay respects to Buddha or to seek answers to your doubts, our thousand desolation temple welcomes them, another young monk said. Oomph. The pink-clad female cultivator did not succeed. A strange look flashed in her eyes. The other three female cultivators restrained their expressions when they saw that. They had suffered a loss. Therefore, the four of them stopped pestering him and entered the Wanhuang temple while laughing. How can you touch a nascent soul cultivator's face so casually? Sumo looked at the backs of the four female cultivators. It seemed that the rumors of the Wanhuang temple's 300 nascent soul cultivators were true. That was because the two little monks guarding the door were nascent soul cultivators. However, cultivators who were not at the soul transformation realm and above would not be able to see through them. Guan Xiong, on the other hand, smacked his lips and said meaningfully, the female cultivators of the Bliss Palace are definitely not this weak. Looks like the Divine Sun Dharma assembly this time is going to be interesting. Sumo nodded. You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.